All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics are Local. And y'all know if it's the second Friday, y'all know it's time for the vote. And that nothing could be more poignant because we have an election coming up. A special election is coming up this Tuesday. And so it's really important for folks to get out and vote. Why? Because our friend, and of course, as you all know, we are the producers for the Payne Report, and so as you all know, Payne went home to be with the Lord last month, and so all of the candidates that are coming on tonight are actually vying for that particular seat to represent the 10th district. So
Yep.
it's going to be a really, really important show tonight because they're going to be competing against one another to fill the remaining term of his seat, and then, of course, running next year for that seat in its full term.
And it's great because we have a lot of candidates who agreed to come on tonight. We're going to start off with candidate Brittany Claybrooks. Then we're going to have Linden Mayor Derek Armstead. Then candidate Alberta Gordon. Then candidate Daniel Godfrey. We're going to have a political roundtable. And then we're going to finish the night with candidate Newark City Council President LaMonica McIver. Then we have DJ Rhino in the state of hip hop. So we're going to have a lot of people who are running for Congress that are up, and we're going to have some good discussions. We have actually our first up person right now, someone who has also been a frequent guest of our show. When you first ran for East Orange Council person and won the East Orange Council race, maybe 5, 6 years ago.
Yes.
We have with us our first guest tonight, Brittany Claybrooks. Brittany, welcome to All Politics are Local. Thank you for coming out and making this time to talk to us about the candidacy. This race is always this is the most personal of the races for our program because Congressman Payne was a personal friend of all of ours, who's a friend of the program specifically, and so we really do look forward to just the the gravity, right, of the conversations of the people who are going to fill in some pretty big shoes, right? So welcome to All Politics are Local.
Hi. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I know, this is not a library or my home setting, but I am on the go constantly. And so we are working into the very last second. So I'm happy to have had a moment to come on here and chat with you guys. The last time, I was here, we were in person and it was in a studio setting both times I came. And so we bless God for technology so that these things can happen and we can talk about the important things anywhere from anywhere.
Absolutely, right. And this race is coming up. It's coming up on Tuesday, so it's coming up quickly. Just getting right into it. What is there about your biography, right, that make you a good congressperson, right? Like that make people should you want people to vote for you for Congress. What is there in your biography that should make them vote for you?
So to be honest with you, running for Congress was not in a plan of mine. And so I it was something I prayed about, and someone once told me that, when I was considering going to school to get my doctorate degree, a mentor of mine said that when you know it's time for you to go higher, when you look around you and you don't see anyone to whom you would defer in this time, and you feel like you have something to contribute to the body of work or to the field. And so it is at this time, after much prayer and consideration, I feel like we're at a time where people in my generation, particularly me, given my experience, has something to contribute. But that being said, I've spent, a little over 14 years in this business, not in the business of politics, but in the business of government and public service. I have worked anywhere from, the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, fighting for reform in Florida for children who were, at the time, we had this thing called school to prison pipeline right around the time that Trayvon Martin was killed. And we had the opportunity to reform policy at that department in the division that I was working in. to create a system of civil citation instead of sending youth to prison. Because when you're in rural and urban areas, we know that those children were oftentimes, doing things out of having no activities around them. And so there was no need to send them to prison and put a felony or something on their record that would prevent them from having a future. So we fought to change the law towards civil citation, which is you're paying a ticket. It's different. Same thing moving on to DC, where I worked in the cloakroom for Ms. Pelosi under the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. That is a very secure space that only Congress members and a few staff that are in there go. And Mr. Payne and I, where he became my mentor at that time, we had this joke about, we're close, we're tight, we have a professional, bond, but the contents of that professional bond we cannot share. Why? Because that secured space was for trusted people and the members before they went out on the floor to speak. And so after that, I decided, what else is there? How else are we going to change the world when it was time to move on? And at that time, healthcare.
You worked for Congressman Payne at that point.
I did not work for Congressman Payne. I worked for former Speaker Pelosi in the cloakroom. And that is a place.
Hello? Ed, you there? I think
I'm here. We must have lost your feed. Yeah.
Ms. Claybrooks, you just went out. You are back now. You were talking about the cloakroom? Because you're giving us an education.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you well. You were talking about you ended off when you were talking about the cloakroom.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? We can hear you. Can you hear Ed? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, John. She went out for a moment. Maybe she need to go back out and come in.
All right. So if you can hear me, you can go out and come back in. Are you leave the studio and then come right back in the studio?
I can't hear you.
You can. I'm going to type it in. Okay, good. I think she got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that was cool. I didn't know about the cloakroom, so that's a good education.
Yeah,
that we're getting.
Maybe she can explain what the cloakroom is,
right?
For people who don't know.
Right. And why we do this is, and why we have the candidates in this, because we really believe in civic discourse. We know that one of the 12 is going to have an incredibly important responsibility to our entire community, and we want to make sure that they can get their point across. Yes?
Sorry.
Okay, that's great. We can hear you well now.
Yes.
You were talking about the cloakroom.
Yes. And so I left off at, I think you asked me whether or not I worked for Mr. Payne. No, I worked in the cloakroom under Ms. Pelosi, where members of Congress, particularly Democratic members of Congress, often came to prepare for the House floor for a vote. And that is where I worked. And then I moved on. It's where I met Mr. Payne. He was one of the most, informative Congress members, and no one was beneath him. And that, for me, was what made him stand out as a congressperson. And then after that, I decided, hey, how are we going to change the world? At the time, healthcare access was a really big thing. And as a former foster youth, folks were deciding when, what will be constituted as vulnerable populations. And at that time, the big conversation was around millennials having access to healthcare and what our economic futures would look like. And so I joined a national nonprofit called Young Invincibles, where we advocated for not only millennials to stay on their parents' insurance till they're 26, but for former foster youth like myself to stay on Medicaid until we were 26. And then also I worked with Virginia to help pass Medicaid expansion in our enrollment work. And so there are a host of things following that. I decided, how are we going to change the world again? And it was, if you could change people's built environment, then you could change their life. And so I became an urban planner. I went back and got my master's degree for New York University, where I studied urban planning and development. My focus was housing and economic development with a minor focus in land use. And so what a prime time to be in that field in a place like New Jersey, where there's a housing crisis, underway, and we were developing any and everywhere. And folks were trying to figure out, do we develop? How do we make room for people to be able to afford to live in it, particularly in spaces where we have apartments, but they aren't, the rents aren't that high. So we need to spur economic development. And for a lot of people, it's building residential units. And then one of the unintended costs of that is that people are pushed out. And how are we figuring that out? And so in between that, I became a councilwoman and fought for change, which I can talk more about. But all in all, my entire career, I've only sought to ask three questions, which is, why are people struggling? Why do some people live better than others? And what are we going to do about that? And it comes from my background, having both of my parents be incarcerated for most of my childhood. So the biggest part of my biography is just my lived experience, which has informed my career.
Briefly, can you just tell us what is the cloakroom, by the way?
So the cloakroom is a space where both sides of the house have it. It is a space that is particularly for Congress members to prepare for their speeches, for their vote, for you know it's a very secured space. It's something that it's one of the safest places to be in the Capitol, because it's a space just for them to decide how they're going to vote on something, to have conversations. It's not something that, I intend to talk about in depth, because it is, again, one of the most secure spaces on the House floor and in the Capitol. But it is, a very, protected space for them.
So it's more of a private space, particularly for Congress members to go and communicate amongst themselves.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And
Great.
it is a very limited space as well. And most legislative bodies have that. When we're on council and we go into executive session, it's a place where, what happens in that room is privileged. And so I think all elected bodies have it, from school board down to parking authorities, down to state legislatures, down to the city council, where business is taken care of.
Okay. Jonathan, are you frozen? I think he might be frozen.
Yeah, that's the thing about technology, right? You're talking about
Yeah.
how to manage it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you don't have control over.
So why don't you just talk a little bit then about your platform? Let's talk about that.
So, I think that there are a host of issues that are important, but for me, my three biggest goals are to address the housing issue, not just issues of rental affordability, but issues of, how the federal government who's responsible for public housing is, you know, working on upkeep of public housing. Also, the state and local tax deduction expansion. We know that there's been a cap placed on, how much a person can claim on their taxes with respect to their homes. And as we know, that New Jersey is a high tax paying state, and we're seeing that cap hurt working families and middle class families who have homes, in addition to working on a federal fix or a federal program or some federal legislation around a first generation home buyer program. A national fair housing um, coalition or initiative been looking into has been looking into can you hear me?
I can. No. I can hear you.
Okay, has been looking into different pilot programs across different states and how they're using their federal allocations to create first time homebuyer programs. I know NJHMFA has, been looking into it and working in that area too, but there's a need or a push for the federal government to create a universal program around that and take these as examples of what they should be doing in states like Minnesota, New Jersey, North Carolina, places like that. So I do want to work on that. And then finally, I want to work on more investment in our home fund programs. We have not seen an increased investment before COVID since 2011. And we know that states, particularly New Jersey and our local municipalities, could use that. So that is my housing platform. Moving on to the caregivers bill. We are all just one family crisis away from having to experience issues of affordability regardless of our race and income. And so for me, the AARP has called on us to begin to look at what bipartisan legislation would look like to secure futures for people who are caring for either elderly loved ones or, children, grandparents caring for children when the parents are absent or child care is high, or people caring for disabled family members regardless of age. We're seeing some states start to figure that out, but the AARP is calling on congressional members to pass federal bipartisan legislation because we know that on average, folks are spending 18 unpaid hours, and yet we're saving this country $600 billion. And New Jersey makes up, according to the AARP, about 17 billion of that. And so we have over 1 million caretakers here. I've been a caretaker. My sister has had to quit her job into her 50s to care for our mom till she, had passed away. So those are real issues. And one in every three voters, to be honest with you, is a caretaker. And on average, they're 50 years old because we know that our parents are aging. And so, that is a real issue that I care about. I also care about aging in place. I care about, making sure that we are really creating economic futures for people, whether that's, combating, our small business administration and our minority business divisions at the federal department from being sued because they're working on DEI and making sure that Black people and colored people or not colored people of color have access to wealth and capital. And we know that Biden's administration has invested in that and increased budget lines for that. And it's been supported by the Congress, but there is a real attack on DEI in the congressional space, in the Republican-led congressional space, and we have to combat that. And then finally is environmental justice and access to healthcare. Those are all of my platform points. My career has been in it, and it's something that I just think affects people's lives beyond the political jargon.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jonathan probably sent you what some of the other things he wanted to discuss with you.
Mm-hmm.
I hear your housing, I hear your investment, I hear your international environmental justice piece,
Mm-hmm.
but where are you at when it comes to foreign policy, right? As far as it relates to Israel, as far as it relates to Ukraine, as far as it relates to Russia,
Mm-hmm.
Africa, Haiti, and reparations. Where are you at with that?
So reparations, let's start there because as a Black woman, as a woman who's only lived in Black spaces, predominantly Black spaces, and I wouldn't choose to live anywhere else because that is who I am. Let's start with HR 40. HR 40 is the bill currently in the House that addresses not only reparations, whether it's the study, but it also addresses the congressional power to begin to review proposals for what reparations would actually look like. And it's something that we're hearing raised, and I posted on my page on Juneteenth because we can celebrate this federal holiday, but we have to get down to the bottom of how to get something like this out of committee. And respectfully, as a former Congressional Black Caucus Foundation intern and alumni and all of those things, I know the members in Congress, the Black members in Congress, and it's something that I believe that they would have done if they could have done it. And they have been fighting that uphill battle for so long, and I'm looking to join them because this is not a fast fight. You'll hear candidates say, well, we're going to do it now. Well, I think that there have been people in Congress for a long time, including our good friend, Congressman Payne Jr., who has passed and has co-sponsored more legislation than anyone in his class. If they could have passed it, they would have. And so the slow work is working on what is keeping it in committee. And that's something that I'm looking to go do. And then, on international policy, I will be honest with you, my biggest priority is the people of this district. But as a congresswoman, I know that I'll have to work on national issues. Haiti, having all of my friends from Florida be from Haiti, having a colleague that was the first Haitian American to be elected in the city of East Orange, having a host of extended family who identifies Haitian or who are Haitian, who are either first generation or from Haiti. I think we ought to be making sure that we continue to put money in those bills, like the one that a lot of members got criticized for voting on, when it meant that there was weapons or things sent over to Israel, but also in those bills were humanitarian efforts and aid to places like Haiti, like, countries in Africa that are experiencing this. So Black issues everywhere are our issues. And so for me, that's another thing that I support. Um, and then finally, for the elephant in the room, I just am a proponent of peace. I believe that, you know, countries who are being attacked in any kind of way deserve to have the right to defend themselves against those attacks. I believe that, when things happen like that here, there are responses. However, I also believe that, we ought to be getting down to negotiations and solutions that will leave Israel emerging as a place to be in peace, and the people of Palestine as a newly rebuilt place, and it is a sovereign nation. But the war, on Hamas itself is something that people ought to just be honest about. Iran is our collective enemy, and our collective enemy is terrorism. Our collective enemy is, corrupt governments. And to the extent that we need to work on our own, which I believe you ought to get your own house in order, we will continue to do that work too. But I do believe that my biggest priority is the people of this district and what is happening here in the United States. And I think people also ought to be honest beyond the buzzwords and what is happening in the news about how they will handle that in Congress, and not try to play up to any base, but make wise, experienced decisions that will leave us in the best possible spot.
But you do know that there are some, and as you ID, and specifically the Black community and reparations, and the spaces that you live in, primarily, as you said, Black spaces.
Correct.
You do know that there are some in our community, specifically, are concerned with the amounts of money that have been poured into Ukraine in particular, right? And some folks in our community have said that those types of funds could be better used right at solving some of the problems that exist primarily in our community, right? How do you feel about that money being spent to fight those wars?
To be honest with you, let me just be honest with you. We live in a country that has been dedicated, whether they are in war or not, to not spending money where it belongs. So, I don't want this war situation to be a distraction, especially when we know that this money that this aid has to turn around and be spent in the United States, because most of the time they're buying, even if we allocate money to them, they're turning around and buying their weapons from us in quite a few cases. And that's why I want people to be honest and say, like, look, one, let's be clear. Defense and public safety is the largest part of any budget, whether it's municipal, state, or federal. That is the largest part of any budget. And people always said to me as a councilwoman, well, we spend a lot of money, on the police. Every city does. Now, how the police uses it is another thing. The issue is that we live in a country that, whether we are at war or not, they are ignoring us. So even in the peaceful times when we're not sending money everywhere, they aren't spending it on us. And so the goal for me is to look at areas and programs and agencies where we are not seeing them use their federal allocations properly to make better programs, whether that's the Department of Education, whether that is the Department of HUD. Again, we have not seen an increased investment in our home program since 2011, and almost every other New Jersey, congressperson, including Mr. Payne, has signed on to that bill and is urging our departments to do that. And, respectfully, the president has showed some leadership in that area while we're talking about whether he should be there or not. Right. So, again, this is about being mindful of where we live and their continual commitment to not doing this, and the fight that has to happen within the government system that is not set up for us. And I think that is a real distraction from us discussing. They weren't allocating it before the war, before Ukraine, before any of this stuff. And so we have to be focused on what the real issue is. The same thing when I was on the city council in East Orange, or when I was working for Obamacare, I would tell people, very white rural people who were Republican. They would say, well, Obamacare is a problem because it's coming from Obama. And I would say, well, ma'am, you as a person who fall in this low income bracket, you voted for this person in your state legislature, but he continuously votes no on expanding Medicaid. And so you, just like the Black person that lives in the urban town next to you, cannot have Medicaid. So until he votes yes, you will be in this situation. And so I began to flip mindsets and change mindsets and have people stay focused on the real issue. No, it's not a Black or white thing. This is a you thing and your representative thing. And it's the same thing here. Let's stay focused on what we have to do, because we still have enough money, even if we were doing that, to put it where it needs to go. And I don't think Black people are addressing that fact.
And thank you so much. Can you? We're run out of our time for this segment, but thank you for coming on and sharing this time and answering these questions. One last question, actually,
Yes.
2 last questions. First, the first question is going to be, who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? Because this is All Politics Are Local, and we always ask that. And the second question we're going to is, how should people vote? And you can give the line number, the date, when they should come out, that kind of stuff. So,
Yes.
So those 2 questions.
Thank you for that. And as you'll find out, if you're wondering if I'm going to fight in Congress or not, that little segment was letting you know just how hard I'll fight for our issues. And my favorite hip hop artist has to be somewhere between Lil Wayne and Tupac. They have been. I gave that same answer last time I was here, and it has not changed. And that was 6 years ago, and I still feel the same way. And then people should vote for, if you are looking to vote for me, you should vote if you are in Essex County, column 8A. If you are in Union County, you should be voting column F. We call that the Freedom column. And if you are in Hudson County, you should be voting 1H. And we call that 1 Hudson, seeking to unify the district. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be on here. What I'm most proud of is my growth since the last time I've seen you both. And I look forward to continued conversations if I'm elected or if I'm not, because I'm going to continue to do this work in this state.
Well, thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Glad to have you on. Look forward to having you back on. And good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
All right, and that is our first segment on All Politics Are Local, and we're always really important to have all the candidates on to have conversations about this important election. And so our next candidate is Mayor Darryl Armstead of Linden, New Jersey. He is the current mayor of Linden. Hello, Mayor Darryl Armstead. Mayor Armstead, welcome to All Politics Are Local.
How are you? Well, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on. So we're going to just jump right into it. Running for Congress in the 10th district. The first question that we're going to ask is, what is there about your biography that makes you good for Congress?
Well, for starters, I'm not backed by any political machinery. My name is Darryl Armstead. Has run off the line, against the machine since 2008, and have transformed by replacing people on that against those machine candidates. We've transformed our city into an economic powerhouse. Let me say, because we haven't raised taxes in 7 years, and we haven't diminished any of our services. In fact, we've increased services. Everything they're talking about, housing, senior programs, we're actually doing it without the help of the federal government. And I do feel sometimes for some of the other cities, I don't know what's going on how they're governing their towns, but I know how I govern mine, and we govern my town very efficiently, and we are providing essential services for the people. I hope I'm still here. I don't hear anybody in the background. Hello?
No, you're still here.
Okay.
I think Mr. Austin may have frozen. So let me see if I could come in.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me see if I can pick up where he left off at. Jonathan, are you back?
I am back.
Okay.
Yeah, something's wrong with my home connection. I had to just go on the hotspot. So question. You in domestic policy, right? Like when you're talking about what Congress does, they pass budgets, but they're always doing innovative things, right? Like what Congressman Payne had to do on multiple occasions. What would be your domestic agenda as a congressperson? What is the legislation that you think our district needs, District 10 needs?
I think District 10 and the country as a whole, we share some commonality with some of the policies that exist in this country. Our border policy. I mean, we've got to figure out a way to, first of all, let's make the dreamers become citizens. Okay. Secondly, we have to tighten up our border. But you have to understand how this border became what it is. Okay. And it stems from a regional policy that a failed regional policy. Our government has propped up regime after regime in Central America, and they've destabilized the whole region. And now people are trying to get out of there. They're trying to get to our country because of a failed policy, a failed foreign policy in this particular region. And that has to be addressed, whether it's El Salvador or whether it's Haiti. Our policy in our own region, our own backyard, is terrible.
You're muted, John.
When you're saying it needs to be addressed, what are some of the things that, or what would be in that legislation? Like how would it be addressed?
Well, I find it all too often convenient for us to buy bombs and munitions for countries when we should be taking care of some of the countries in our own backyard, helping them to establish, manufacturing to stabilize their economies so that people aren't trying to run away from their country to get here. Okay. And again, we've got to, if we're going to give a country money, we've got to help. We've got to give money to those countries who are promoting democracy and trying to have stable governments in their countries.
When you're looking at other things, right, in terms of domestic policy, what do you think about like that? In the recent years, there've been a lot of conversation about reparations. There have been a lot of conversations about how to deal with the ongoing effects of discrimination, racism. What are some of the ideas that you would have things that should be pushed for, right? Whether it be dealing with police brutality, whether it be dealing with reparations. What are some of the ideas that you have that deal with the way in which racism has worked and continues to work in our society?
Let me just tell you what we did here in Linden. In Linden, we are one of several municipalities who participate in what we call the ARRIVE program. Okay, the ARRIVE program, what it does, it puts a psychologist in the car with a police officer. Okay, so every night in Union County, there's a psychologist riding in one of these different towns with the police officers. And if something should occur in one of the adjacent towns, they come over and they try to diffuse versus trying to arrest and lock up. And more often than not, the problems that we have in our communities are sometimes the same individuals who have these mental illnesses. So by identifying them and having this particular policy, the ARRIVE program, it allows us to go out and have a different approach. So instead of looking at somebody and wanting to beat them over the head or lock them up, we try to utilize this effort. We train our police. We have an extensive training program dealing with teaching our police officers how to deal with the public. We tell them that they have a lot of power. You have the power to arrest, and you also have the power to influence people. And your behavior as a police officer will definitely have an effect on how people think of police officers. So we encourage them. We have outreach. We have all kinds of programs in our town where police interact with the community, and that just keeps a very good relationship with the police and the community. And as far as my city is concerned, I actually increased my police complement from 133 to 155.
So what you're saying is that this can be implemented on a federal level?
Well, it can be implemented on a local level and a federal level. Of course, when federal dollars come in, it makes it a lot easier for these towns to be able to implement policies like this. But there's no reason in the world, there's absolutely no reason in the world that these cities cannot establish programs within their own towns without the help of the federal government. This is not rocket science here. You know, there's no reason in the world that cities can't do this.
What would be some of the things that you would say that is an agenda for foreign policy? We're looking at we're looking at aid to Israel, and we look at the war that's going on there. We look at aid to Ukraine, the war that's going on there. We look at the situation in Haiti. When it comes to foreign policy, what is your vision for your role as a congressperson?
Let me start with the Ukraine. Okay, the Ukraine. First of all, the United States can't call itself the leader of the free world if we're going to stand by and watch Russia just bomb innocent civilians. This is the same way that Adolf Hitler started out, with aggression and not concerned about the human lives of women and children who have no business being bombed and civilians being bombed. Okay, so number one, the United States we have to stand up and say, listen, we're not going to tolerate it, and we will defend Ukraine along with our European allies.
When you're talking about, well, I'll let you continue.
So you talked about the Ukraine, you talked about Israel. Now you have to understand the Israeli conflict in its totality, okay? You had something here a few months back, maybe even a little over a year ago, what we call the Abraham Accords, okay? Where I believe that some of the Arab countries and Israel started to think about maybe the way to end this conflict is to engage in commerce, okay? And I believe there's a lot of Palestinians who wanted to see commerce with the Israelis as well and put an end to all this back and forth. But unfortunately, you have countries like Iran who do not want to see peace. Okay, and Iran somehow or another convinced a group of thugs to go into a concert and kill innocent people, and that has really led to this war. And don't get me wrong, I don't condone the bombing of innocent children and women and civilians that has happened since then, but that act has certainly, I guess, precipitated this whole mess that we have over there now. And it's all because some countries like Iran did not want to see commerce and peace. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, for clarification, after the attacks happened, both the U.S. administration and even Israel said that Iran was not directly responsible for the attacks. The attacks were Hamas, right? Led and created.
Who's funding Hamas?
So what you're saying is that the blame should go on Iran, because I know that there's been an insistence on both sides to not ratchet it up so that it's a war between the United States and Iran or Israel and Iran. Are you suggesting that Iran is responsible for those attacks and therefore retaliatory action should take place?
I'm not suggesting that we should have a war with Iran, but I am saying this: Iran has its hand in this mess. They have their hand in it, okay? They don't want to see peace. They do not want to see peace in the Middle East. They really don't.
And one last thing on that, when we're dealing with the history of the United States and Iran, many Iranians believe that the United States, because we overthrew a democratically elected government in the 50s, that led to a repressive Shah of Iran being there, and the current regime that's part of a revolution that happened pushed off, right, a dictator who was installed by the United States. So when you're saying that Iran doesn't want peace, do you think the context is important, right? Like the context of history and the U.S. relationship with Iran is important in our ongoing relationship?
there's no question that this situation with Iran didn't just happen overnight. Yes, it's been the United States foreign policy that in many cases has not been a very good one. Again, we have a tendency to prop up dictators and put people in places that somehow turn around and bite us in the behind. We've been very good at that, at propping up dictators who somehow turn out not to be so good.
Okay. All right. So also, is there anything else that you want to say on the foreign policy end or the domestic policy end?
Yes, I'll talk about the situation in Haiti. Again, we have a failed regional policy. Okay, Haiti is only a few hundred miles away from the United States. There's no reason why it should be in the turmoil that it's in. The United States has refused. There's an unwillingness and maybe an inability to go down there and kind of like straighten things out. And in fact, we have a lot to do with the problems that are in Haiti. I mean, between economic embargoes, for years and years of embargoes, the debt that Haiti has incurred through the World Bank, a lot of things are happening in Haiti that we are unfortunately at the root cause. And we keep going back to Haiti with a Band-Aid approach. Okay,
right.
We're going to the most recent thing that made no sense whatsoever is to spend money on Kenyan forces to send them to Haiti. It's a Band-Aid approach. What they should have done is took the existing Haitian military, all those millions of dollars they're going to be paying the Kenyans, invested into the Haitian military with some real training, so they can take care of themselves. Maybe even train some Haitian men who are here right now who are willing to go back to their home, to their home country to help straighten things out. But to hire a foreign government, and the Kenyans don't speak, they speak French nor Creole. So you know how this is going to turn out. It's going to be a lot of money spent, good money after bad.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us this evening. Very, very much appreciated. There are two questions we're going to ask you that are going to be combined. The first question is going to be, because we're all politics are local, who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? And the second question we're going to ask you is, how should people vote? What's the line? When are they voting? What does it mean to vote for you in terms of those lines and numbers?
Okay. Well, I kind of like Jay-Z and Nas. I'm old school. Both of them, I think they're both on equal footing as far as I'm concerned. So I'd have to say that they're like in a tie for my favorite hip hop artist. Although Biggie Smalls wasn't bad either. I like Biggie. Biggie was very creative. But how should you vote? You should vote for Darryl Armstead. I'm a Democrat, of course. And if you're in Essex County, you can vote column 9A. I'm sorry, you're 9A. If you're in Union County, you can vote column D, as in Darryl Armstead. And if you're in Jersey City, you can vote column J, 1J.
All right.
And I have 30 years experience in this business, at running in government, and the last 10 of which I've been a mayor. And like I said, we've done some great things in this town. I'm not funded by any political bosses. As a matter of fact, my first election for mayor was $5,000 versus $176,000, and we beat them with shoe leather. And we don't answer to them because we don't have to. And we're doing what's right for the people. I've got close to $2 billion of investment in this town, and we've taken those investments and we've improved services, and we've created an economy that works for the people in this town. I've lowered property taxes 7 years in a row, and while increasing services. I don't think there's anybody else who can say that. I'll take that same tenacity. To Washington with me, and I know it's going to be difficult, but that's what I'll do.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for coming on the show, and we're going to have you back again on our show as well. So thank you much, and appreciate you coming out.
Okay, anytime. Thank you for having me.
All right, good luck to you.
Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, cool. So now we are on our third interview. Hopefully my tech is good now, and I won't get knocked off of the broadcast. Hello, Alberta Gordon. Welcome. Welcome to All Politics Are Local. I have known you for, I believe, most of my life, and have taught your child at one point, back at one point. So, because you graduated from Science High School, right? Hello?
I think
Ed,
she's muted. I think she's muted.
okay. Oh, you are muted, and you're not muted on my end. You're muted on your end.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to unmute you. It's on your end. Yeah, so go out, come right back.
Okay.
Oh, good. You're good.
Yep.
All right.
She unmuted herself, John, and then she took herself out.
All right. Well, she's going to come right back. So,
All right.
oh, good.
I think,
You're coming through loud and clear.
yeah, my child that you taught helped me to unmute.
Okay, great. Tell Tasha I said hi. That's great. So, question. And you graduated from Science High School, right?
Class of 1986, charge on. We're going to charge right into the Congress.
Okay.
I mean, I could really win this race with just the alumni from Science High and their spouses voting for me.
Fair enough. Now, question, right? And you have done quite a bit. What is there about your biography that makes you qualified and makes you want to run for Congress? What is there about your biography that our public needs to know?
So, Jonathan, I have been affected by every area of policy that we are going to touch on, correct? My son was shot when he was 9 years old, and he was left quadriplegic, right, as a result. My brother, Delano Gordon, who started Above the Rim with me in 1987, died of cancer because the doctors didn't think to further test him when they saw anomalies on his lungs. And later we found out he had cancer, and he died very quickly after. My niece's mom died in childbirth, so I know all too well about maternal health issues and how hard it is for children who have to grow up without their parent in the house, especially a mother. So, um, but aside from that, I have worked in public service in the background for many years. I was a miracle volunteer, which led to me working at Newark Housing Authority, where I wrote the Choice Neighborhood Initiative grant, bringing $30 million to this district. Um, and in that, we put the Training and Recreation Center up in the Dayton Street neighborhood. And the way I even came to that is because while my son was disabled, I ended up being a home mom. And someone just asked me, it's like, you're really smart. These seniors down here are being charged more money than they're supposed to. They're being charged fees. They're saying that they're not responsible for the fees. Can you please come help them write letters? So I started writing letters to housing to get rid of fees because they were in danger of losing their apartments. From that, people started asking me about all kinds of stuff. I lost my Medicaid. I can't get my medicine. How do we work on this? So I started writing letters for that. Um, they had heard about my advocacy at the housing authority, and at the time they were doing the Choice Neighborhood Initiative grant, and they were having trouble getting people to meetings for the community engagement part because they have to. It's part of the grant. You have to have community engagement. You have to have know what the people are thinking on the ground in the community, and that's going to be crucial to government, period. In order to be successful in Congress, you have to be able to understand, be able to be at the very grassroots level with the people to understand what their problems are. I spoke to some young men today who told me, they're having trouble getting housing. They've been in a shelter, and their 2 years is almost expiring. They have jobs for the last 2 years. They're previously incarcerated, finished their time, but they can't find anywhere to live. Um, Multiple reasons. They have bad. They don't have a credit score at all, or they don't have any credit, or they need 4 times their income, the rent and income, to get a place to live. These are things that you only understand when you're talking to people in the vineyard, right? And people have always talk to me about things. They feel very comfortable telling me about their issues, and they know I will fight for them. Like I've gotten people out of subprime mortgages. I fought against Governor Christie's Medicaid waiver that threatened to put thousands of people off of Medicaid, and I simply said, these grandparents here are raising their grandkids. Who is gonna? Are you ready for your foster system to swell as a result of these kids not having anybody to take care of them? So these are the things that I've already been doing. Aside from that, I'm a small business owner, right? So I know how hard it is to get access to capital if you haven't been in the business for 2 years and can prove you're profitable. Also, having great credit and access to insurance. So these are things that I know we need to work on in Congress for our economic development strength, right? And finally, I've been working with major federal agencies like Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, HUD, Department of Justice, for many years in different capacities at the corporate level, helping major corporations to improve processes, save money, cut costs. I am Green Belt certified Six Sigma. I'm cloud certified, so I can address technology issues and understand about privacy policy and technology, and also integrate AI in our community on a natural level.
Oh, that's awesome. You talked about a lot of different things that you've actually worked on in terms of your biography. The question that I have right now is a question of like legislation, right? Like, if you were in Congress, what are some of the actual bills? What are some of the things or agenda that you would have for domestic policy? What are some of the things you'd like to see passed? And throwing out some stuff like, if you could fit this in, questions about reparations, questions about police justice, right, in terms of police brutality, or any of the visions that you see would be necessary and needed in our domestic policy.
I don't mind talking about all that, but I just want to put a caveat because to me, I don't mind those conversations, but to me it seems one-sided, right? The 10th congressional district is diverse, right? So although we need to talk about those things, we have far bigger problems than that in the 10th congressional district. So as far as reparations, we know it's a debt. I believe it's owed to us in order for it to have, but in order for it to really impact our lives, we have to put infrastructure in, and proper community and proper structures and systems to be in place in order for it to really have impact for us. I'm gonna give you for example, if you got all the money you needed and you can't grow that wealth, it's not going to be impactful in your life. I mean, you'll spend it, it'll be gone. We have to understand how we can use it. So we definitely need to have reparations. I'm all for reparations, and we need to address that. I don't really want to get into a lot of policy on how we can get that done because we're running in a tight race, right? So until and unfunded, I'm unfunded. So a lot of things that I'm doing, I have to do on my own every day. So we're not gonna go delve into super policy because I would have to talk to my colleagues. I am a natural consensus builder. So I will have to have more information what already has been done in Congress on these bills, talk to my colleagues and understand where they are on these issues so that we can reflect on that. But first thing I want to talk about is abortion protections, maternal health issues, healthcare in general, making sure that we have preventive care as opposed to emergency care. Because, like I said, my brother died and had we had more testing done on the preventive side, we may have been able to save him. But too many times these health insurers and hospitals have to make a decision based on how they're being paid and things like that. So we have to really understand the total picture in order to make real decisions in those areas. And I think you also asked me about foreign intervention. Is that what you asked me about?
Foreign policy, right? Like we have There's a war that is going on in the Ukraine. We have the controversy in terms of the funding and arms that we give to Israel. There are issues in Haiti, and there are other, foreign policy issues in terms of our military troops in Africa. What is your vision for what U.S. foreign policy should be, especially given, like, what would be your vision of what you would work for within U.S. foreign policy?
First of all, let's be clear. We spend a lot of money on foreign governments, right? I think that we should we should have foreign aid tied to our domestic spending policy priorities, right? Um,
And this could be,
I think we could better. No, I'm sorry. I think we could better use our defense budget, right, to work on things at home, right? We could use the Army Corps of Engineers to help us build affordable housing, things that we need at home. Um, we could have our defense budget used not just in the South, but in all across the nation to help bolster our economy, creating jobs and things of that nature. So I just think that just being one-sided on the domestic, I mean, on foreign aid, is it's not too hard to talk about. But I think that we have to make sure that everybody has food, water, clothing, the basic needs of individuals should be taken care of. But aside from that, I think we need to train our foreign governments how to protect themselves and things like that, because we're not taking care of enough of our own things at home. We can't even ignore the poverty problem we have here now. We can't ignore it. So I think I read somewhere in a study that our poverty problem is almost equal to those of other countries. And I know there's an argument about how that's calculated, whether it's calculated by income or consumption. But at the end of the day, we know we have a poverty problem. We can look right around our cities and see. And I also heard somebody in our debate yesterday talk about how we have space that we could be utilizing in Newark. And I thought to myself, why just Newark, right? We have a whole 10th congressional district that runs from Caldwell all the way down to Linden. And I think affordable should be for everybody. And I also discussed in my other conversations that as we raise our minimum wage and things like that, we have to make sure that we don't legislate one thing at the detriment of another. So the consequences, like I said, fighting where I fought for $15 hour wages with Gail Muhammad of SEIU. The consequence of that, a lot of women who had subsidies no longer could get those subsidies, but the rent went up 3 times. So they can't afford to live even with the higher wages. So until we do something to adjust our federal poverty level to qualify people for these things, it's going to be a problem.
okay. Well, thank you very much for that. We have 2 more questions,
Okay.
and in those questions, the first one is, let me just hold on. We have 2 more questions, and in those questions, it's the first one is, who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? That they always ask. And the second one is, how should people vote? You can give them the number and all the other stuff that they should vote in a line.
Okay. So I like one of my favorite artists was Tupac Shakur. Rest his soul in peace. Um, I mean, I like KRS One. I mean, I'm old school. I'm not really that familiar with a lot of the new rappers. Um, I like Tupac because he really talked about issues that affected our community, right? He talked about that mama who had to take care of her kids on welfare and needing the care of the community and that whole village that took care of of the family when you weren't there, right? So he talked about that at a very deep level. That's why I like Tupac. You know, he was really in touch with his community and the people around him. So that's why I like Tupac, because it, you know, bodes well with me.
Okay.
Now, um,
How should they
and I
vote?
like
What is
KRS
it?
One.
Okay.
Okay. Oh. So they should vote for me. I am 2A in Essex County, and 1K in Union County and Hudson County. Thank God, because the Bible says first shall be last, and last shall be first. So if they start at the end, they can pick me, and a vote for me will be a vote for them. So I will also tell you this: um, I'm a natural consensus builder. I have, and I think about winning in terms of the general in November too, right? We need people who can be excited to vote. People are just not excited. Our voting is down 20% in this community, and we have, you know, voter suppression going on, even in our own community, right? So we need people who can excite the electorate, because we have to defeat Trump. I am I am sellable up and down this district from Caldwell all the way down. My I I I went to Union County College, me and my daughter. I lived in Newark. My uncle was a prosecutor. My family owned restaurants in this district. My sister's a business owner in Union. My other sister's a teacher in Irvington. You go in any community, ask about Alberta Gordon, they know who she is. I already have a relationship built with the nonprofits and every senator in this community, and assemblywoman. I can call them. I started when I was working on things in the Day Street neighborhood, feeding seniors that were in the Day Street neighborhood. I worked with Angela McKnight before she um, went on to be our person, assemblywoman. Um, Shavonda Sumter went to Ready to Run with me in 2009. So I am really ready to bring fresh perspectives into there, and I can transcend seamlessly into Congress. And not only that, I can excite the young voters. I have 3 kids, 21 and 30, and they are getting these voters involved. They're getting the young people involved, which we need. And I have family across from South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Virginia, and these states where we really need to excite people. They're even getting excited by this candidacy. So I'm telling you, a vote for me is a vote for you, and it's a whole, and it also will help improve the voting, improve voter apathy in this district. So I'm telling you, vote 2A in Essex County, 1K in Union County, 1K in Hudson County. And by the way, we have to really protect our democracy. And I say thank you for giving me this time to talk to you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate All Politics is Local, because it is, they are. And my local community knows who I am. I've been working with them and for them. We started Above the Rim to stem the tide of violence for youth and teach them um, to conflict resolution without guns. And so we talked to voters. We knocked on so many doors. I don't have money. I'm not. I'm boss. I don't have money to get across the district. So I got these volunteers, and we have covered Newark. We have covered Union. We have covered East Orange. We have covered every place in the district where grassroots people who love and understand democracy and want to see it work for our people. So let's make it happen. We're gonna win. We're gonna win. We're gonna win. I appreciate the time to talk to you
Well,
and
well, we
talk to my voters.
Well, we appreciate having you. Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you very much for being on All Politics
Go
Local,
Chargers!
and and good luck. All right, so that is another interview on All Politics Are Local. We are interviewing candidates for the upcoming congressional race that is going on. Race is Tuesday, but there's early voting that is going on now as well. We have up our next candidate who is running. We have Darryl Godfrey. Darryl Godfrey, welcome to All Politics Are Local, and thank you for coming on our show.
You're more than welcome. I mean, I'm in the car going to another event, so excuse me for the way my background looks. But Thank you. Thank you for having me on this show. I appreciate the opportunity. And let's chat.
All right, cool. So, first question out, just to introduce people to who you are and why you're running for Congress. What is there about your biography that would make you a good congressperson?
Well, as you said, I'm Darryl Godfrey, born and raised in the city of Newark. I am an entrepreneur in the city of Newark. My wife and I own several businesses there where we employ over 25 employees. On another the job that I have, I am the chief operating officer for one of the largest in financing companies in the state of New Jersey. We provide real estate financing for commercial and acquisition financing. So really, I mean, my focus is really affordable housing, economic development, and healthcare. And why I think that's important because for the last 25 to 30 years, that's all I've been doing is doing what we call really network building, net worth building, worth, the WORTH, really to help them change the side of economic development. We see a lot of development going on throughout the state of New Jersey, but how much of that development is for MBEs and WBEs? We need to change that calculus that is offered for all of us,
What
and
is
that's
an
not
what is an MD? What is
okay. I mean, the minority business owner and the woman business owner.
okay?
Oh, I'm sorry, that designation. And so, as we know, as we talk about the economic growth that's going in Jersey City, that's going in Newark, that's going throughout the district, we see a lot of new housing coming out in development. But how much of that is going to people who don't have the financing and the entry into this development opportunities? What I've been doing for the last 25 to 30 years is building homes, building mixed-use commercial properties throughout the district to really help with the development. But I've been doing that in connection with people who usually don't have the capital to get invested into these communities. And so I want to bring that to the district, but I also want to get federal subsidies to help MBEs and WBEs because one of the difficulties they have is really having the capital to start their business. And we need to do a better job with financing subsidies from the federal government. We get some of it through the SBA Small Business Administration, but not enough where it really helps create generational wealth. It's worked for me. As I said, I'm born and raised in the city of Newark. I lived I graduated from West Side High School, went to 13th Avenue School Grammar School, and was fortunate to go to school. I went to Rutgers in New Brunswick, met my wife of 34 years, my childhood sweetheart. So everything I do was in the district from day one to day two. So I want to bring all those issues was part of my economic growth agenda. My other agenda when we talk about healthcare.
Before we go to the healthcare agenda, can you break down the economic agenda a little more? You're saying that you would use the federal government and subsidies to help businesses. Can you just break that down and how that works?
Okay, so for instance, I am in charge of providing close to $40 million of federal money to what we call the former Secretary of State Sheila Oliver created a program we call the Sheila Oliver Investment Fund. And what we're doing, we're going throughout the district, particularly in the more urbanized areas like Newark, Jersey City, East Orange. We're getting the vacant lots and we're going to developers, MBW developers, helping them acquire the lot, build 2 to 3 family homes, and these homes are going to people who traditionally can't afford it. Plus, their renters would be people who traditionally are below the normal income levels. So, we had the money from the state that we got from the government, so that's one thing. And then we connecting the people who are usually locked out. And when these people acquire these homes, they gain equity and they can build generational wealth. So that's what I mean by economic development, the whole holistic approach to building wealth, but also building our communities back. You're doing a couple of things. You're building wealth and you're building community.
Interesting, because at that point, you are talking about a program that actually exists, and you're talking about expanding that on a federal level, or are all these
Yes.
already federal programs?
Yes. I'm thinking about expanding that on the federal level. We received the money from really during COVID. As you know, a lot of money came from the government due to our President Biden, and we're taking some of that money from that the government has and putting it into use for projects that the one I just told you about.
Okay. Well, thank you. Now, when we're looking at other domestic policies, right? You said that the other domestic policy and was healthcare. What
Yes.
is your vision for healthcare, and especially the legislation that would deal with that?
Well, my vision is really to expand on the Affordable Care Act. Most people call it the Obamacare, and really lower the income limits that are currently right there for a person who is unemployed. It'd be hard for them to qualify for some of the requirements of the Obamacare. It's been a great program done nationally, but we need to tweak it a little bit. And then the main reason why I am not the main reason, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate from that, because I'm a recovering not recovering. I'm a cancer. I recovered from cancer. I had prostate cancer. And one of the things I noticed by going through that process, when I went to my doctor, most of the offers was encompass a lot of African American men. And I knew that we have an issue with healthcare right by there. So I think it's an issue with education. I think it's an issue with acknowledgement of it. But I also think there's an issue when it comes to, you know, how the service is going to provide in terms of expense. So as I get to DC, when I'm elected on July the 16th, it's important that I focus on expanding more financing into the affordable housing, not the affordable housing, into the Affordable Care Act, but also bringing knowledge to the district, not only in the district, knowledge nationally about this cancer we have of prostate cancer. As you may be aware, prostate cancer we can solve, but unfortunately, the largest killer in the African American community, and really just community as a whole when it comes to men, is prostate cancer due to lack of knowledge and lack of financing needed to cure it.
Okay. So really you're talking about expanding access because Obamacare or the legislation that was passed was not complete, and you're saying that there's some
Yes,
elements of it that are needed so that people don't fall through the wayside. Some people earlier talked about maternal health
yes,
and especially high rates of maternal mortality. You were
yes.
talking about prostate cancer, but it just seems like that there are a lot of health needs that still need to be legislated, and that's one of the things you want to focus on.
Yes, but also maternal health care too. I was raised by a single mom. I had three sisters, and if I have to be very frank here, is I never understood that when a mom has a child, how close they come to death. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, in a lot of the communities that our people live in, a lot of our practitioners, nurses, and doctors are not sensitive or really knowledgeable of our health issues. My niece died of sickle cell 10 years ago, and now they can finally, I shouldn't say cure it, they can help sickle cell. I can remember when she went to be diagnosed, they thought she was a drug addict because they wasn't sensitive to the plight what's going on in our urban areas. So that's another thing I would focus on. How can we help give more knowledge to what's going on with sickle cell anemia?
Okay, that is good. And in terms of that domestic focus,
Yes.
um, in terms of foreign policy, and I guess the questions that I was throwing out um, would be there are a lot of things going on in terms of foreign policy. Uh,
Yes.
and we have the war in the Ukraine. We have what's going on in Israel. We have the situation in Haiti. There are questions of things that are going on with U.S. involvement in Africa, also just conflicts that are in different regions. What is your vision for foreign policy for the United States? Especially some of the more controversial issues.
Well,
Uh,
my number one vision is, particularly when we talk about the unrest going on in Israel and Palestine and what happened in October 7th. I mean, it was terrible. But I call for immediate ceasefire. We need to have dialogue. I mean, unfortunately, it's a very tense situation that really goes back to 6,000 years. and I understand both sides, but I think we need to have we clearly need to have a dialogue, ceasefire. I would back President Biden on let's have immediate ceasefire and let's have a conversation.
Okay. And are there other foreign policy issues that jump out at you that you?
Yes. What's going on in Haiti is a travesty that's been going out for years. I mean, as you know, the U.S. doesn't have jurisdiction in there, but I think the U.S. has enough as a superpower to come to really go in there and really, if you ask me, we need troops on the ground there. We have to stop the unrest there. I don't want no lives to be taken. I think if troops come there, it would solidify at least to have conversation. There's too much unrest going on in Haiti and too many lives being taken.
Okay. And when we are talking about and again, this is a question that you don't need to answer, but when we're looking at U.S. foreign policy and we're looking at the lives that are lost in Ukraine, the lives that are lost in Israel, the lives that are lost in Haiti, and especially given the history of U.S. foreign policy, often it seems like that the United States puts a different value to life depending on where you are, right?
Very true. Very true.
We talked about the whether or not some of the conflicts that happened with Iran. That there was a U.S. history of that we talked about with an earlier candidate. What is your vision for an equitable policy? Like, what are some of the things that you might criticize Biden on, or criticize other leaders on, or America's foreign policy in the past with regard to having a real rule of law, international rule of law, and looking at an equal value to life?
Well, we must, unfortunately, the prior President Trump took us out of NATO. We need to rejoin it again, as President Biden has done. We had the Rhino as the superpower, as the most powerful nation, and we have to align ourselves to stop what's going on in some of these nations. What's going on in Ukraine, it's a bloodbath and it's terrible. So we have to regain our presence as a U.S. superpower. We cannot sit by and have the approach that if they don't pay, then we're not going to help them. That is the wrong approach because we are a U.S. superpower. When you talk about what's going on in China, they're looking at us, and we need to, to really, put our big boy pants on and girl pants on. As I said, I don't want to be too genderist here. It's just understand how the approach we have to have. We have to be this to continue to be looked at as the superpower.
Okay. And is there anything else that you want to talk to about in terms of your own agenda in Congress? Like, if you were elected to Congress, what would you work on? What committees would you want to join? Like, what would be your baby? You spoke very specifically about economic development. In a way, it sounds a little bit like would be part of larger reparations programs when you're talking about specific businesses and minority-owned businesses and Black-owned business, et cetera. A lot of those things are talked about, but can you include that in a conversation of your vision?
I mean, first of all, excellent question. I mean, the reparations issue is one that needs to happen tomorrow. I mean, I don't know why we still are just having HR 20 as the conversation where we're just going to do a study, and the study is going to allow us to see how much the money is going to be figured out. We need to be way past it at this point because every other nation that has something done to them that was wrong has been paid for that. And we know what continues the systemic genocide, if you ask me, that goes on in our African American communities. We need reparations to do that. Reparations not only in the form of money, healthcare, and education too, are also other issues. And also when we talk about the wealth gap between African Americans and the other group is probably, I think it's 300,000 the average white family has as compared to close to only 10,000 the average net worth of African American family. So we need to change that. That's the only way that we're going to change the educational gap, the healthcare gap. People need resources to live, and we can't have this economic suicide that continues to happen in this country. So I'm a big supporter of reparations because of that. If you ask me what I want to be in the Ways and Means Committee, one of the most powerful committees there, because that controls the economics of how money is allocated throughout the world. I want to be a big part of that. I want to be on the SBA committee, finance committee, because that's the way money is flowed. The Small Business Administration is an entity that provides guarantees to banks to provide equity into to loans that traditionally wouldn't be done. I want to tweak that a little bit because I think I used to be an SBA provider in my career in finance. I want to change how that program is allocated throughout the country.
Well, thank you so much. We have just two more questions for you. The first question is, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? And also, what is the line that people should vote on in the different counties of the Congressional 10?
Well, you got two loaded questions. I'm a big Biggie fan, okay? So, and also Tupac. I mean, it's sad that the way they both, ended their lives, or they were murdered. But, the message that I think about almost every day. I would just say on July the 16th, vote for Darryl Godfrey, because I'm the one who has, it's not going to be, I don't need on-the-job training. I'm the one who's going to provide for you access to funding that's going to help grow our district. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the program. We'll have to have you back again as well. One of the good things about of interviewing so many different candidates is that all of you have very different and very interesting biographies, and you've been doing things in public service. So always want to have you back as well. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, and you can call me anytime, and I'll be there for you. Appreciate you, and you have a blessed weekend.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was the other part of All Politics Are Local. We have interviewed 5 candidates so far, I believe, or 4 candidates so far, and we're getting ready to, we will, at 8 o'clock, we will interview the 5th candidate. But in the meantime, we want to have a conversation about politics, and we wanted to bring on a community activist, and there's some other people who will be joining us, to talk about the November election, to talk about some things that are going on, and to get some perspectives that are not mine, right? Some perspectives that may be very different, right? So Bradley, are you on?
Hello there. Yes, I'm working on my camera right now, but I'm here.
All right, but your audio is great. Your audio is great. So, one of the things about All Politics Are Local is we're trying to get different people to talk about politics, the things that we feel are really important, and who may feel very differently, right, one way or another, about a host of issues. We have an election that's coming up, and there are many people who are scared that, like, Trump is going to win. There's a danger of, they talk about a danger of fascism that's happening, that will happen in the United States. And frankly, he says a lot of crazy things on a regular basis. Question, when you're not on, I'm just going to mute when you're not speaking, I'm going to mute your camera. But so he says a lot of crazy things. So the question I have for you is, and I know that you feel very strongly against a lot of stuff that Biden has done, right? Whether the war in Israel, and I think that there are a few other things as well. Are you going to vote in November? What does that look like? Trump gets reelected, Biden, Harris, what are you thinking?
Sure, I'll vote. But the thing about voting is it's not very political. It's a temperature check is what it is. Politics is actually engaging with people and building consensus on things and organizing. Voting is 15 minutes out of your life. What are you going to do with the rest of the 365 days in a year? That's the way that I look at it. At the end of the day, I'm done begging those in power to make changes, because whether it's Republican or Democrat, immigration laws still get worse. Government spending on military still goes up. And sometimes even more under Democrats, often even more under Democrats than Republicans as well. So that's how I look at it. I mean, but when it comes down to it, the way that the Democrats are built is like we'll put like the pride flag and Black Lives Matter on the bomb that we're using to bomb these other countries. The Republicans are more outright with their racism and their bigotry and xenophobia and so on. And yeah, so there is a real threat of the organizing of the far right within the United States of America, as we see all over the world, really, this rise of the far right, because really it's a response to very real conditions, right? It's a response to the fact that there's continuing to be inflation. It's a response to the fact that, climate change is driving us further and further to the edge of our existence as a species. We're right now in the sixth greatest mass extinction, which is caused by not humans inherently, but the system that we have created, which detaches us from the rest of nature. And there's feedback loops with all of these different types of things. Climate change drives forced migration, which drives more unrest, which drives more war, which drives more forced migration. And these types of things compound and go off of one another. So I think regardless of
when you're saying,
power,
when you're talking about migration and forced migration, last week we had the Prime Minister of St. Vincent's on, and the Grenadines on, and he was talking about the hurricane that just hit them, right, and the devastation that it had, and I was moved by the interview, and a big shout out to Josie Gonsalves, because she set up that interview, but the Prime Minister was like, because his country was hit, 90% of the housing on some of those islands was gone. Right, there's going to be large levels of housing. People are going to be going different places, right? And when you're talking about forced migration, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to have to make choices about where to live when there's no housing. Right? And when toward the interview, he's telling me about the devastation. He's talking about it. And I'm asking, well, what is it that you need? What do you need from the international community? What do you need from the United States? And he's like, we don't need, don't send clothes you haven't worn, right? Like that doesn't help, right? Or and he goes into it, and then he really gets down to it. He was like, you have money, remittances, send it to your family, cool, all good, right? But ultimately, he says, your environmental policies are killing us. Like, that's what's causing all this. And if you really want to do anything for us, you can change your relationship with business and nature. And it was a really good interview that we had last week on this show, and when he talked about it. And it kind of reminded me of what you're talking about, because that is a criticism of the right and the left. More so the right, but still, even if the most progressive policies get in place, we still have not dealt with climate change the way we needed to. And he mentioned 1.5, we all die. As in, if the temperature rises 1.5 degrees by the end of the century, we all die, right? And the key is to lower it from that. And that's part of what he was talking about in that. Is that, when you're talking about political organizing, what is it that you mean? I know you're involved in some stuff, but ideally, when we talk about politics, when we talk about national politics, we talk about the rise of the right. We talk about, there are apparently like 20 million white people who are ready to commit acts of violence, right? How does the situation that we are in now, how do you see that in your vision of how to organize?
So yeah, I guess I'll just continue off from where I was really, what I was saying was that right now the far right is talking about and addressing real issues that people are going through. Their strategy though is to just use a scapegoat. Whereas the Democrats, they'll talk about it, or the liberals will talk about it, and then, that's all they'll do is talk about it, right? And pay lip service. The far right, they use scapegoats. So they'll be like, F Wall Street, F Bill Gates, they're working together, the working people, are getting the short end of the stick with all of these taxes, but also group into that Black people, also group into that gay people, also group into that immigrants. And you know, the person, the one person that I know that is actually a Trump supporter is a Black man from Barbados.
Mm.
This is the reality of what we're seeing. The right is not just white.
Mm.
And
Multicultural anti-Blackness.
Multicultural anti-Blackness, Black anti-Blackness, Black xenophobia, immigrant xenophobia, because they're like, we got over the border, close the door behind us. That's the reality that we're facing. When Trump said they're taking away Black jobs, it wasn't him trying to make a pass at Black people. It was him trying to get Black people to see immigrants as the enemy, which we're seeing more and more. I'm talking to people down the street and they're like, oh yeah, they're treating those immigrants better than us and everything. So what we need to do is we need to realize where our real interests lie, where real power comes from. Power comes from the collective. All power at the scales that we see it within our lived lives comes from the collective. This is all politics are local. We need to act locally, but think globally. Everything we have comes from people all around the world working together to produce it. The device that we're talking on right now, it's people in Africa mining the materials. It's people in the Middle East drilling the oil. It's people in Asia that are manufacturing the parts. It's people in the United States that are programming it, right? Right now, we live in a world where we're working together more than ever before. Production is socialized, yet decision-making over that production is still privatized. It's still in the hands of a wealthy few, and they use their power over that to control the rest of society. We think of economics as separate from politics. We need to stop. Economics and politics go hand in hand. The person who has control over food, water, and shelter has control over society. And that's where my perspective lies, is that politics is about power and decision-making. We need to think about, where does power come from? Where does power lie? And how do we use the power we have, not just pander to those who we think are in power? Because the problem isn't that we don't have power. Malcolm X said we're not outnumbered, we're out-organized. The problem is that we give up our power every single day that we go into work. We have this illusion of democracy in terms of our government, but we don't even have the illusion of democracy as soon as you walk into your workplace. In Amazon, they control when you pee. So until we take power material reality over the things that we produce on a day-to-day basis, we will continue to face and go through the issues that we are currently going through. We need to fight for a world in which the people that do the work make the decisions.
Tonight, we are interviewing a series of candidates for Congress, right? For the 10th Congressional District. We've interviewed quite a few. I think we interviewed between 4 and 5. We interviewed 4 tonight so far. We'll interview one more later. When you're talking about organizing and organizing locally, what is the connection between that and local politics or electoral politics? You're saying economics and politics don't need to be disconnected. So what would be that connection when you're dealing with, for example, just a local race?
Let me tell you, the thing that got me into politics was all local stuff, because from a young age, I was already jaded by federal politics nationally. It didn't matter who was president. My family was still poor, right? So I was like, all right, let me focus on the local politics. I'm in school most of the time of my day. Let me focus on the school board. I was going to those school board elections. You can break down the people that get elected to the Newark Public School Board into 3 categories. Every single year, it's the same 3 categories of people that are elected to the school board. Somebody that represents the North Ward and the machine that's connected to the county. Somebody that represents the mayor and his team, and somebody that represents charter schools. Every single year, you can clearly delineate those 3 people being elected to the school board. Because at the end of the day, even on a local level, it is money that controls who gets elected and who doesn't. Before the primary, there's a money primary. Yeah, maybe for district leader, it's a little bit more fuzzy, maybe for these smaller local elections, but even like the school board, like it's a school board, like that's very, very local. but they control $1 billion. They control the education that is given to the minds of thousands of children within Newark. And as if there's money to be made, as in charter schools, with the privatization of our education, then there's going to be interests that are involved that go beyond just the constituents, just the voting population of the city. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
This is one thing to think about, right? Let's look at the school board elections, for example, right? They're very low numbers usually in school board elections. It seems like, and they're not expensive. Like the school board elections aren't the expensive elections. When you're talking about local grassroots machines, whether they're the North Ward or mayor's team or even charter schools, it seems like on a local level, isn't that to some extent what grassroots politics is? You are literally getting local people to act in the interest of those local people, right? Like as in the North Ward acts in the interest of the North Ward, what that may be, right? And those are people who get together, they organize, they look at things of common interest, and they go out and they vote accordingly. Isn't that just grassroots politics? Isn't that just something that needs to be imitated?
Mm-hmm.
Nah, it's top down. In the North Ward, they go into every single church. They have money to be able to pay people to go to all the churches in the North Ward and tell them who to vote for. They stand at the polling site, Behringer. They tell people who to vote for as they're going into it. And it's not just people within the North Ward. I said it's a machine that goes up through the county. That's Joey DiVincenzo and everything, right? And you can talk to people that are on the ground that have organized within the school board elections. I've campaigned for people that weren't on that main slate before. And it still takes money. Yes, it's smaller, local, so it doesn't take that much money. But if you're just a random person within Newark that is a parent or even an educator that cares about the children, you don't necessarily have, because it's more than just money, right? It's what the money is used for. To pay people to go out and flyer, to pay for the paper, for the printing, for the flyering, right? To have people that can be posted up at every polling site and tell them who to vote for, right? It's not just like, there's the Victoria Foundation, the charter school foundations that fund people's campaigns even on local Newark public school board elections and everything. And I'll just put it this way. We didn't get the right to vote by voting, point blank, period. And every time from the beginning of the United States, it was white property-owning men that voted. Every time suffrage was increased to include Black people, to include women, and so on, they've put in place more and more mechanisms. And when I say they, I mean those that have the real power, those that have power over our material conditions, those that have power over wealth that they drain from the rest of us, put in place more and more conditions to make it so that our vote doesn't matter as much as it would have.
But isn't that, and we're talking about people who have, whatever the reason they have that interest to vote or to come out or to go to those like organizing meetings, isn't that the organizing that needs to be replicated? Like if you have progressive causes, isn't there just a need to have progressive organizing along the, and wouldn't it look very similar?
It's a different type of organizing, very much different. So the type of organizing that was done in like the civil rights movement, in the feminist movement that got us Roe v. Wade, that got us the EPA. See, these are all things, Roe v. Wade, EPA, civil rights. None of that came through voting. All of that came from people out in the streets. The way that we got it taken back from us is by us acting like voting is going to change things. Roe v. Wade got overturned. The EPA is gutted. Those are things that are controlled by unelected officials. The Supreme Court.
I think maybe we're
Well, I address specifically what you were saying as well, real quick. which is the organizing for it is different. I read this book, which is called Without Apology, Abortion Struggle Now, written by Jenny Brown. In the intro, it talked about the type of grassroots organizing that led up to fighting for Roe v. Wade. And what people used to do is women used to get together and do these things called tell it how it is. People would talk about what they were going through on a day-to-day basis. And that's one of the gains that we got from the feminist movement. And there's a quote that basically says, when you say something and you hear other people saying it, it turns the personal into the social. And when it's social, it's political. And when it's political, it means we can do something to change it. That's what we got from the feminist movement. The personal is the political. That's grassroots organizing, not paying so that you can have people that work to campaign and canvass for you, right? Grassroots organizing is people doing it out of its intrinsic value. Value is the top-down organizing, which is what's happening even on our school board elections.
Wouldn't it be a combination of both? Like, wouldn't it be a combination of, like, even if you look at many of your nonprofit organizations or even many of your organizations that are progressive in nature, they have funding mechanisms by which they pay there's some volunteers who are paid. There are some people, there's some things they do to employ people, right? Like to sustain movements, right? Like, shouldn't progressive movements also become institutional? As in, shouldn't there be progressive institutions that leverage people power in similar ways? Like, I've seen many elections where the person who spends a lot of money loses because they're out organized. That happens in Newark all the time, right? Like, where if you have people power is far more important than raising money, right? Especially on local elections, where people power becomes incredibly important. But isn't the weekly meeting, like People's Organization for Progress or other organizations that meet on a weekly basis, they organize, they try to find solutions to problems, and then they use the government as well as other private institutions. Like it seems like there's a multiplicity of things that should be working together, right? Isn't that, like, you might disagree with what the organization in the North Ward does, but don't they also provide services for certain constituencies, which is why they're also able to get loyalty as well as other machines, right? Like, there are certain constituencies that are taken care of in one way or another, whether it's providing daycare, whether it's providing jobs, whether it's providing certain schools, right? Like, are we in talking about organizing, missing the messy nature of what it could look like?
Let me start with this. Far right, Republicans, all that. One of the main things that they say in political discourse is that America is not a democracy, it is a republic. Aristotle or whoever it was said democracy doesn't work as long as economic inequality exists, because as long as there's rich people and poor people, the rich people can pay for the votes of the poor people. What you're exactly saying right now is that I'm providing you services, I'm providing you food, I'm providing you all of these things. Vote this way. That is how our quote unquote democracy currently works. We will never have a true democracy unless there's economic equality, right? And I'm not saying that we need to not organize. I'm saying we need to understand how we're organizing, because it's not good enough to do good anymore. Good is not good enough. We need to do what's going to get us to win, right? We need to have strategy, right? And there's all of these things. There's a book called The Revolution Will Not Be Funded that talks about nonprofits. I don't want to talk your ear off. I can go on and on explaining explicitly how each of these things don't work, because I've organized. I was a student in your school when I was part of organizing with a nonprofit. Been there, done that. I was a student at Science Park when I was doing the electoral politics. Been there, done that. I was appointed by the mayor to the Newark Equitable Growth Advisory Commission, right? Committees are where social movements go to die. Been there, done that. I was at Newark, I was at the Occupy Newark, right? That's what That's what Rob Baraka came up on. Occupy Newark. He came up on the protests from the Newark Students Union. He was out there in the streets. That's the people power, but that was the organizing that was done outside of all of those other mechanisms, right? He rode the wave of organizing that was done by other people on a day-to-day basis. I was out in the streets of Vailsburg protesting gun violence because my biggest fear when I was a child was getting shot through my window, right? So it's that's the real organizing. That's what gets people political. And don't don't mix up what I'm saying. Like, we have weekly meetings. I have more than weekly meetings. Just today I just came from, right before this, a reading meeting about like where we read. We have a reading group. Mondays we plan. Every Saturday we have discussions with people outside. Tomorrow we're having discussion on Pride in the Family from Newark to Palestine in Harriet Tubman Square Park for anybody that's interested in coming. Every week, every Saturday we have a meeting. The following weekend, the group that I'm a part of is doing a national town hall about forced migration, the forced migration crisis at the border, where we're having an academic Chicano scholar talk about what's going on. We'll do something the Saturday after that. So yeah, 3 meetings a week, every week. There's more than that.
And one of the things that when often we interview the mayor and we interview people who are involved in the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, they met once a week, right? They would hold weekly protests on gun violence. And then that grew from there, right? To looking at, well, what are they protesting? What are the solutions? What are the mechanisms for those things to be solved? And from those protests, they ended up running for office, right? And organizing around that and creating the Office of Violence Prevention that looked at violence as as like the CDC talks about, as a communicable disease, and developing strategies for that. So it went from organizing to actually engaging in both organizing and looking at electoral politics together to form the institution to change so that it could address in real tangible ways policies that dealt with the issue that they were first organizing around, right? So now, like with Keisha Yuri and there's an entire infrastructure of anti-violence in Newark that has worked, right? Like in terms of the numbers, comparing them to like 20, 30 years ago.
10, 15 years ago.
Right, and but I mean, it's the lowest murder rate in terms of numbers that has been in over 30 years, and it seems like it's not or, it's probably and.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it that one strategy doesn't work in isolation?
Mm-hmm.
But all of these strategies probably need to work together.
Yes.
They can, and that's what I said. That's what I said to people that I've talked to that work with the mayor, is that right now we're on parallel tracks. But at the end of the day, he didn't know what was going on with his police force when they came to kick us off the encampment. So
and that's the thing that
there's parallels. We can move parallel. But when somebody can't hold the line anymore, they can't hold the line anymore because it's to the root. That's what radical means. It means to the root. Take a math class. Radical, it's under the square root. If we look at the root of the problem, that's when we look at the founding of this country, when we look at what this country was established on, when we look at the actual mechanisms, economic and political and social, we see that there are limitations to working within the government. We can do that for as long as we can, but I know people that work in the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition that are talking about revolution too. Let it be, that's temporary.
I got a question.
The thing is, at the end of the day, it's going to have to take more than that. It's going to have to take more than that. And when we actually look at what's going on, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. When we look at what's going on, Yeah, there's parallel tracks, but it reaches a point where it's not going to be parallel anymore, and there's decisions that are going to be forced to happen. When they called the police on those students at Columbia, Mayor Eric Adams is in a WhatsApp group chat with the billionaires of New York, and they told him that they're going to pull their money from his campaign if he doesn't call the police on those Columbia students. This is real news, right? Mm-hmm. That is how our world functions. I was on that Equitable Growth Advisory Commission. We're meeting with the president of the Bank of New York. We're meeting with Bloomberg Associates. There was somebody on that worked for Prudential. Who really runs this city? When Mayor Gibson got elected, I'm sure it's probably like a urban legend. I don't know the exact facts of this, but I was told that the mafia held him at gunpoint or whatever, and was like, know who really runs this city. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a black mayor, but know who really still runs this city.
Well, I mean, just in terms of that history, when Gibson was elected, he was elected with the help of Mayor Baraka and under a black nationalist guise, and then betrayed them. And this is according to Woodard wrote the book on Baraka, and also in terms of the stories that directly come from that. Baraka would say that it was the black middle class that betrayed the black working class. And it's when he stopped being a black nationalist and started becoming a third world Marxist, because Gibson got a white police officer or a white police chief, right, in charge of the police at a time where that was considered horrible. So that it was considered a betrayal of that interest. But they kept, but doesn't that just mean that there are still organizing principles that take place? Like your organizations should not cease to exist because someone is elected, but isn't it like that those different tracks have to work? And when people don't do those things they're supposed to do in elected office, they need to be replaced. The rich people do that, right? Conservative who are poor do that. But isn't that really what you're talking about when you talk about organizing? Getting people to do the things that you need them to do, and if not, replace them, because people power, especially at a local level, is more important than financial power. Because at the end of the day, it's the more votes that you get. And we see this in the local elections. Mm-hmm. You got a question, Hakeem?
What? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's actually another question came to my head since you went on, but it's kind of connected. When we talk about revolution, what does that look like? How do we support real revolution? How do we create safety nets for those who can't fend for themselves, who can't feed themselves, who can't house themselves during the revolution? And then the question is the goal martyrdom? Because if, I'll kill you is the word, I'll kill you. And we can't protect each other. So how do I move forward? If I hold the line, again, it's martyrdom. And, we've seen what happened in the 60s and the 70s and when people get locked up and exiled and murdered, the community moves on with their lives. People move on. There are few individuals who pick up the torch and pick up the banner. When we talk about POP, Newark is a very special place in that organizations like POP have maintained over the last 30, 40 years to provide that political education and that inspiration to stay active and involved. But, across the nation, there aren't as many as strong and as diligent. I'm not gonna say there aren't any there. Of course, I'm not all over the place, but when we see what happens in Newark, there's still a special energy of politicized minds who are still active in pushing the line. And I think, the Baraka administration is definitely the beneficiary of that. But in playing the political game, is the final goal martyrdom.
Exactly the opposite. Revolution is self-defense. Because the way that we're going right now, if we keep going this path, we're gonna we're gonna be martyred by this system. It's either the thing, and I'm gonna just put it simply, it's either capitalism or humanity. Capitalism will destroy itself. It's about whether or not we get rid of it or it gets rid of us. Because
Right.
It's destroying the planet, it's destroying us on a day-to-day basis. So
Right.
The way that I would put it is this too, is revolution is not just about violence, right? Revolution is about, it's not a question of violence, non-violence. This is the conversation that MLK and Stokely Carmichael were having, or Kwame Ture were having. Kwame Ture reached a point where he said, it's about Black power, right? It's about our power to actually change and affect things. And it's not a question of violence or non-violence. It's a question of self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is a revolution would not be for the sake of just upending things, just breaking all organization. And that's what I was trying to say before, right? Organization is important. It's just that the way that we have it right now is a pyramid. You have the people at the top that suck up all the wealth in the valley that's created by the people at the bottom. Then they have people in the middle who keep us in line, the police, the teachers, the lawyers, etc. They pay those people explicitly to keep the rest of us in line. Then you have the people at the bottom that are doing all of the work to maintain, feed everybody, transport everything, do everything to maintain society. What we need to do is flip it and cut off the tip.
Right. Now,
working people make the decisions, set the bottom line, because the way that it is right now, the people that are rich set the bottom line. They're not there watching they're micromanaging. They pay people to manage for them, but they set the bottom line and they say, if you don't make me profits, you're fired. If you don't do what I want, you're fired. We need to flip it, create an actual democracy where working people are making decisions democratically over our economic resources, over healthcare, food, water, shelter. And that's to go to what you're saying. How do we provide for ourselves in the process? That's exactly how we provide for ourselves. We cut out the middleman, because we're the ones that are making the food. We're the ones that are transporting the food. We're the ones that are doing all this. If you want an example, look at Seattle 1919, general strike. They took over the city. It was the safest the city had ever been. Workers took over. They didn't just go on strike, though. They said to the milkmen, there's still babies that need water, that need milk. So go to all the places where we have babies. We'll mark it off on a map for you. Go to all the places that have babies, but don't go anywhere else, because this is a war. This is a class war, and we need to hurt the profits of the bosses.
Yes.
But we need to maintain ourselves in the process.
Yeah. So I agree with everything you said. I'm not pushing back on anything you said. Trust me, I'm in lockstep with what you said. You were spot on. I agree, right? So there's like a few things that come up that I'm like, organizing. Right. That's the key. Organizing the people, not just individuals, but organizing the masses of people around, these movements. Right. Because you give us examples, but like it's so embedded and so ingrained in every part of our life, the capitalist system, which is going to eat us all. Like you said, I totally agree. Right. So it's like getting to a point where, we can flip it. But when you go to flip it, they're not going to just let you flip it. They're not just going to let you do that, right? It's the how do we protect ourselves? We have to bring more people into the movement, right? So I said earlier today on Facebook, which is interesting. I said that I can't get jokers to start a book club, let alone a political movement, and how powerful a book club actually is in politics. Like if you could just organize 15 families over the course of a year, and they show up at a city council meeting, we represent these 15 families, how much actual power you'd have, right? Small group, not major. You don't need to change anything major, but getting people to understand that type of an effect and then growing it is like the hardest thing in the world to do. We'd rather just debate and argue with each other on Facebook around Democrat or Republican. Now, that said, Jonathan knows, like, I'm the conspiracy theorist Don Dada. I'm still, a lot of things I still subscribe to, but it's got to be practical, right? So I'm talking about from 1989 on up. I'm talking about all the classics, all the, the Hold the Pale Horse, all of them, right? I'm just I didn't vote for Obama twice because you're going to use the black man to usher in the Illuminati, and they're going to get everybody chipped with Obamacare. And luckily, my fiance at the time, and my mother convinced me to sign up for the Affordable Care Act, right? 3 months after I signed up and got approved, I broke my hand. Come to find out, I got some blood condition going on that's making my hands and joints. My mother had to have her hand fused to her wrist. I got the same condition. I ended up having to have an operation, 3 surgeries. I couldn't afford it. Thank God for Affordable Care Act. Thank God for it, or I wouldn't have use of my left hand. That's an extremely small step to really what should be universal health care for everybody, which is a very, socialistic way to approach healthcare that the Republicans, are not. So I was able to buy a house in September because our student loans got forgiven, freed up 21 grand. Now we can go buy a house. Again, something that's deemed as socialistic and evil and just a very small step in a right direction. I'm not saying it's the right direction, it's the end all, the be all. It's just, but we see the pushback from the other side. There's, all the talking points that the Democrats should be leaning on, because when you look at what Biden has done over the last 4 years in terms of, national agendas, he's been able to do things that no other president has been able to do since probably FDR, right? And we go, these things help poor people, a lot of which are people of color, black and brown people, right? So when I see the swing over here, and the government, I'm like, no, it's not the government, it's the people in government. And how can we raise up a class of people who think about what you're saying and then how to execute it within the framework of government that we have? I personally side with democracy, majority rules. I side with that. I know that capitalism subverts democracy and we don't have a true democracy. I get all that. However, like Jonathan said, when you can organize the people and you got the people, it does trump money. No pun intended.
People are practical. People are practical, and people see BS. They see BS. And that's what voting is. And that's why people don't vote. Y'all think people are lazy? People are not lazy. We've been being told that we were lazy since we were slaves. Since people was enslaved, they was told they were lazy when they were the one doing all the work. People ain't lazy.
But what you
people
said about
lazy,
book club,
that's not why they're not voting. It's because
what you said about the book club.
And let me just say,
what you said about your book club.
Yeah, I'm pulling people to the book club because it's not just reading to read.
That's practical. That's it right there.
Yes. I'm pulling people to the book club because I am not going on the basis of voting, because I'm going on the basis of where our real power lies, because people can smell the BS from a mile away, right?
But isn't that?
And the thing is, let me just say real quick too. You said Biden's doing the most since FDR. FDR said it explicitly. He said, "I'm doing this to save capitalism." Because there was people taking over it. 1919, what I say, they took over Seattle. People were taking over grocery stores and redistributing the food. He saw the threat of working class people organizing to take over the economic foundation of America. And he said, we got to stop this. And that's exactly what it was. You give concessions. That's what happens. You know what's better than repression? What's better than calling the police on people? Oh, y'all want to do a breakfast club? I mean, y'all want to do a breakfast program? Black Panther Party? All right, we'll put it in every school. Y'all, we don't need y'all no more. LBJ, he didn't want to pass the Civil Rights Act. He was forced to.
Right,
by
but it's
people
not
being out in the street.
Right, but it's not about. Maybe I did the wrong thing. It's not about elevating an individual, be it FDR, Biden, or LBJ.
But yeah, we're not. We're not on different pages.
It's just the understanding that because of the time, there had to be some. Because if there was no FDR, right, poor white people, because that's really who it helped. Poor white people would not have gotten the assistance to then create the largest middle class in the white. Like those socialistic programs worked to a degree. Should have been expanded. It should have been intensified. It should have been really like we're here to invest in people and sometimes people have to say certain things in order not to get whacked. And like, so when you hear somebody say something or take a position that seems contrary to what they're pushing, and it's really so, I don't want to die. And it's real, because we watch people who stand on business become martyred. And that was my original question. Like, is the goal to stand on business? Who's next to stand on business? I mean,
Nope.
it's real like that.
No, I'm not useful dead. So I'm not trying to die.
Right.
But we're not useful like that. So that's exactly why we have to be a strategy. That's why we have to be organized. Right. So because that's the violence is the tool of the minority to oppress the majority. What are we doing with bombs? We don't need bombs, because you drop a bomb somewhere, it has a blast radius. You destroying your neighbor's house. The majority does not use violence. That is not our tool. We are constructive. The minority is destructive. The rich minority has to use violence in order to corral us and to keep us in order. Right? What we're doing is to defend ourselves. And the thing is, I just did a documentary screening this past weekend about this documentary called Why We Fight. And this is exactly why I understand really what's going on. Because you know who coined the term military industrial complex?
Nixon.
Eisenhower coined that term, and he spent his whole ever since he was like, listen, this is the biggest threat to America right now, is the growth of the military industrial complex. He was president, and he couldn't do anything about it. He didn't have any power to stop that. What was happening? You see the extent and the effect of it now. So I'm gonna just say, yeah, FDR happened to be president at the time when there were mass movements going on. And his response, somebody else could have did the response. It was strategic. Somebody else, maybe if they were in power, they would have had a different response, which is to just kill people, because that's what happened. We want to talk about fascism. Right before the Nazis took power was when working class people in Germany were the most organized they had ever been. The rich people in Germany tried to pull a fast one on them and put in place a coup because the Social Democrats were in power. The working class was not having it. They shut down the country in a day. The Nazis were bolstered by the rich people of Germany precisely to get rid of the communists, precisely to get rid of worker organizing. And they used scapegoating of the Jews in order to do that. If you look back at it, you can find images of people like Trotsky, a socialist revolutionary who was Jewish and Russian, painted as a devil, as a demon communist Jew. Mm-hmm. That's the language that they were using, and you hear the same exact language now.
Right. It's
only they send us to college to become communists. That's what you're hearing. All these young people are being indoctrinated into communism, and like, that's the scapegoating and the fear mongering that they're using.
Hunger will drive people to work against their best interests, so to speak. Right? Hunger, right? And if you don't have a way to feed the people, not just a one-off, not just one day, but consistently have a way to feed the people, eventually you're probably going to lose the people, because the people need to eat. So it's like,
teach a man to fish. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a day. Give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the lifetime.
Right.
But who owns the pond?
Right. But yes. And the system that it takes to feed the masses. Like, you could fish for yourself, right? It takes a system to fish for millions, right? So we be able to create a system that starts. That's what the book club is like. The best thing I've heard all day. Thank you. So glad I'm on this because that's like, we start small and then you build it out, and it's like, you build a better mousetrap, the world will lead a path to your door. People want to see proof. It's show me, right? So if you could show the masses of people that what we do is better, the masses are going to come. If you're only telling the people what they can do, they're going to do what they're used to doing because I'm hungry and I have to feed myself.
I have nothing to add. You said it perfectly.
Now, when we're talking about this, and we're talking about, again, elections, organizing, voting, is there always a danger, whether it's Hakeem, you were talking about conspiracy theories, Bradley, you were talking about things that are real, like the military industrial complex, the amount of wealth that people have that they can put into, just shaping opinion, whether it be on climate change, et cetera. Is there, and at the same time, right, there is voter suppression that happens. There are attempts to make it more difficult to vote. There is backlash against when Black and brown people organize, like serious backlash to it. Is that almost a perceptual contradiction in that there's almost a belief that the wealthy, the powerful, they're invincible in everything that you do, every progress, every bit of things that might be seen as progress, like getting social programs to work on a very practical level, getting the Civil Rights Act passed, getting the New Deal, trying to get healthcare, and pushing for universal healthcare. Aren't those things collective goods that we should also be organizing at the same time as doing book clubs and understanding what your culture is and understanding how to critically analyze what is good or bad or what your interests or needs are? Aren't, again, I think I'm pushing this, isn't doing all of them at the same time ultimately that goal, right? Making sure your local elected leaders actually work for you. When they don't, replace them. Making sure that at a local level, those programs like anti-violence programs that came from grassroots movements that became electoral. Now there's a Office of Anti-Violence at the state level. There's an Office of Anti-Violence at the federal level that's actually doing good work coordinating and funding these things throughout the United States.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way.
What we should be looking toward.
Yeah, and this is how I look at it. Let's not lose the ground we've gained. Let's not lose our voting rights. Let's not lose the EPA. Let's not lose abortion. Let's not lose what we've already fought for. But let's understand why we're losing it. Because we're still focused on voting. At the end of the day, that's part of it. When we were out there protesting for Black Lives Matter, it's about who's in those moments, because it's periodic. And this is what Hakeem was talking about before. The streets don't pay the bills. The streets don't put food on the table. That's how we make change. But at the end of the day, a social movement can only go so far because people have to get back to work. People have to get back to sustaining themselves on a day-to-day basis. They own the game. They have it rigged already. We're just playing in it. And if we continue to play in it, we continue to play their game, we'll get caught up until we die. Right? And this is what I was saying too before. We're not outnumbered, we're out organized. We're playing their electoral politics game, and as long as we continue to do that, we'll continue to be lost. We can do that, but let's go beyond it. That's what I said before. Voting is 15 minutes out your day. What are you doing the other 365 days out of the year? But
shouldn't you be putting up candidates that actually support your agenda? Like, shouldn't you be punishing candidates that aren't doing the things that you want? Shouldn't they be coming from your movements?
Right.
Like,
sure,
why
we can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools.
The reason why
I get the slogan, right? I get the quote, but when you're dealing with, like, it seems like what you're saying is you should vote, but voting is disconnected. When you are looking at, like, the squad, when you're looking at electing people who do have different views,
progressive politics,
right? Like that would be considered as radical, right? Who are in the House, who are working toward things, who are working with Movement for Black Lives, right? Like, it seems like right now, one of the things that's going on now is that you have highly progressive politicians. And by progressive, I mean they are looking at capitalism as bad, right? In terms of the way in which money can be used in an almost unfiltered way, and are pressing against that in various small ways, but they're more in Congress than they have been before, which is why people are spending like tens of millions of dollars to get rid of them.
Beat them, yeah.
Like it seems like you want people to represent the things you need to represent. If it's 15 minutes, they're not representing you. It's a defensive action. If
The
they're
thing is,
your movement,
The masses of the
yeah,
people,
let me-
unfortunately,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, the masses of the people, unfortunately, and I include myself in this because I don't think that I'm some political savant. I'm not. I'm learning, right? But the masses of the people are so far behind in their understanding of politics, government, the history, context, how we got from here to here. You know, Abraham Lincoln, he was in the Republican Party, and it's like that. But you have to understand the changes that have gone, the nuances that have, right? So the book club to me is such a powerful tool because it engages people, you know, without having to beat them in the head. You're not necessarily talking about politics, but like when I went to African Echoes back in, 1989, 1990, 91, I was going to study this information, this Afrocentric information, but then I got put onto the campaign to free Black political prisoners and prisoners of war. Now I'm going over demonstrations and protests at Hunter College. I'm going all these different places, being introduced to different movements, different understandings, different, it helped grow me, but it started from a book club. And we have to, for the masses of people that we need to really have a political movement, we have to bring them up to speed in a way that's non-threatening, that doesn't, involve too much heavy lifting or people get turned off real quick. You have to kind of trick them into taking on the political, that cross. And so that's why I think the book club is just, and I'm sure you guys agree, it's just a phenomenal tool to bringing people in to then introduce them to all these other avenues that we need to really make a change.
and I would say
Speaking on what? Okay.
I was going to say I would add on to that when it seems like when forming political movements and grassroots movements, right? Like when the mayor did with Black Neoforce, right? Back when both at Howard and in Newark, right? Like it seems like these organizations that may start off as book clubs, eventually people start to look at what their interests are, and they have created a community of common value.
Yeah.
And it seems like that is how ultimately community institutions get built.
Yes.
The book club can be one mechanism. The meetings that you're doing, like ultimately, Bradley, I think what I'm suggesting is that in the organizing that you're doing, eventually one of you needs to run for office so that you have somebody, and that's not the solution, but it's part of an overall strategy, right? Like as in there are some government basically determines how money is spent. Like whether it's local level, federal level, state level, it determines how tax resources are spent. If you're not involved in that, that means you're not involved in how tax resources are spent, which seems crazy since the majority of people, that's their money. So it seems like if you're going to have be responsive to your community, there's a level of community control, like actual community control, that needs to be had over those resources, which ultimately is the most basic thing of all politics. We're taxed. How does the tax money get spent? That's what all politicians do. They spend money. They spend your money. And they spend your money on a police force that attacks you or kills you. They spend your money on making it easier to pollute the environment and destroy the planet. They spend your money on creating nuclear weapons that can end all life on the planet, right? These are collective decisions that we're making. And so part of me is like, not winning with the master's tools, got it, but it doesn't seem relevant when looking at how, like, what it is that needs to be a part of a larger equation, and that's understanding how your money is spent for what you want or not for what you want.
Yeah, sorry for the slogan. It doesn't communicate the nuances that I wanted to, but taxes, before your tax is a pre-tax, and it's called exploitation. When you walk into work, the only reason that the boss employs you is because they think they can make more money selling what you produce than how much they pay you in wages. That's where the wealth within our society comes from. 1/3 of the wealth is owned by 1%. 90% have 1/3. The bottom 50% own less than 1% of the wealth within this country. 42 people in the world have more wealth. 42 people have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the world.
And a lot of that's
where for the bottom 50%, taxes where the real tax is the pre-tax, which comes from exploitation. They're making money off of us, and then they're also paying that in taxes. These large corporations and so on are paying that in taxes, and it's authoritarian in nature because their decision making, and that's what NGOs are, is philanthropy. It's still top down. It's them saying, okay, we'll give you a little bit of the crumbs that we made off of you.
Yes, but even the tax policy.
So when we talk about voting, and I'm saying I'm not against voting, but it's understanding the real mechanisms that are occurring, and everything is relative. Some things are more relative than other things. Everything in the universe pulls on everything else in the universe. But if I want to talk about the motion of the Earth, I'm going to talk about the sun, not the galaxy that's on the other side of the universe, right? So there are some things that have more of an effect than other things. And at the end of the day, we've been fooled to thinking the electoral game is what has the greatest effect on our lives, rather than where we spend most of our lives every single day throughout the week, right? And what I will say is, I don't disagree with you that electoral politics can be a tool, but the tool is more in terms of what me and Hakeem were talking about, which is mass politics and mass organizing. It can be used as a platform to tell people where their real power lies, because it's not about martyrdom, and it's especially not about saviorism. We are not here to save other people. We are here to teach them how to save themselves. And at the end of the day, it's talking about where our real power lies, not just in voting, not just over our tax dollars, but it's over the value that we create on a day-to-day basis when we go into work to produce everything and to make this world run.
Right.
So yeah, we'll run people in elections. We'll run people in elections, but not to just win the elections. But to understand where our real power lies, I think, and to communicate that to people.
What you just said connected to the term common value, which was a very powerful. I've been trying to. It's so simple, but right to the point. How do we develop that common value amongst the masses of people? Because we live our day to day as individuals. This American motto, individual domain. What is it? The individual reigns supreme. It's all about your individualism. That's to separate and divide us, so we don't see our common value, our common power and interest. But to create that common value, right, where we're all on the same page, we know what candidate represents us and what doesn't represent us. And we know, because we're a collective, that candidate doesn't represent us, we get rid of them. And we put people in place that are going to represent the common value. We're so individualized and dissected that we can't see, like universal health care, like a strong public education system, like, we go on and on and on. Like, what's the best for the general public is not on people's mind. It's what are they doing for me? What am I getting? And since Biden didn't give me a stimmy, I'm not voting for him, because it's like you got it all twisted up. You don't know where your collective power lies. You think one individual is determining what's going on, and that's not really how this system works. One individual doesn't determine it. Now, things may change in 2025, hopefully not, but until then, understanding that Congress is the people's vote. Congress needs to represent the people and our common value, what benefits us as a collective, as Americans, as Black people, as brown people, as men, women, gay, straight. What do we all share? We want to be able to feed ourselves. We want to be able to make sure our future has a future. We want clean air, clean water, clean food. We want to know that because we generate so much finance in this country just by waking up and turning on the lights, money's being generated. We need to be invested in. We need to be invested in as human resource, because that's the most important resource. Back to common value. So yeah, thank you, Jonathan, for that term. I'm been running with that for a while.
And also just to even understanding why we have individual billionaires to the extent that we have is a result of tax policy. In the 50s, early 60s, the highest tax rate was 90%, right? As in, the reason why like you're allowed to have that much money is because we have allowed laws
Right.
for people to have that much money.
Yeah.
And it really is about like, how does wealth get redistributed? What does income tax look like? What are those rules? What are those loopholes, right? And the wealthy have influenced that. Like the point is, it wasn't always that way.
Mm-hmm.
In that there weren't always individuals who had more money than God. There might have been corporations that developed disproportionate amounts of money and influence, but individuals having that much more, like being independent countries in and of themselves.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the wealth gap is the highest it's ever been because our tax policies were changed to encourage it.
Allow it. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, back when you said that when the tax rate was 90%, the idea is that, these corporations, these owners of the corporation would take to get the write-off, would invest in labor force, would invest in healthcare, would invest in us.
Or give it away to universities, like people, whatever, right? Like
right.
in terms of various parts of the wealth, not and put it back into some public use, but even more so, they don't have it to begin with, right? Like the assumption was you don't need that much money. It's actually dangerous to democracy for individuals to have more money than God, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so there needs to be a limit on the power of individuals, hence a limit on how on the ceiling in which you can make, hence why there are more billionaires now than at any point in human history. The wealth gap is higher now than at any point in human history in terms of those people at the top and what they make with regard to everyone else. But the only thing that I'm pushing is that it's all related. It's not separate. And when you're talking about like when you're talking about reading group, getting people of common values, whether it's Black Neoforce, which is literally a reading group, right? Like learning about your history, culture, etc. The thing that Raz started at Howard that came to Newark and evolved into things like the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, and then the like current, many people will say the current electoral machine that's really just like started off as reading group. The reason why I press that in the conversation is that what is it? I think it's good to think about what does it look like when grassroots politics actually becomes institutionalized in a way where it can affect actual policy that can actually change people's lives, right? Like I think we all agree that the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition and the extending into the Office of Violence Prevention and what they did is a objectively good thing, right? Groundbreaking policy that was started in a grassroots way. I think that every generation has to do something like that. No matter what the generation is, every generation has to define for itself what their values are and how to implement them. And I think that like when we're dealing with electoral politics, it is not the movement itself, but it is how movements get consecrated in a positive way or negative way, depending on like what did the right wing do? The right wing really just consecrated their movement, right? They had a Christian nationalist movement. that has gained steam and power and overturned Roe v. Wade, that was grassroots organizing. Like the right-wing evangelicals, like their organizations became institutions, became universities. They got people elected. They organized in a very grassroots way that is a little different than the top-down corporate narrative. There are a lot of narratives going on, right? And one of them is the white Christian nationalist narrative that was able to exert power and influence over 50 years of largely grassroots movements that combined with other things, right? But ultimately ended up getting their way, reversing discourse. All I'm saying is that, like, it seems like you are on the verge of creating something that is along the same lines. It's just that, electoral politics probably is an important tool in making some of the gains stick, some of the policies work in a practical way.
Mm-hmm. Practical. If we want to talk about practical, that's exactly why I don't focus exclusively on electoral politics or even majority on electoral politics. The thing that I will say is I'm not necessarily against electoral politics, but when I say master's tools, master's house, I'm saying these electoral politics, the electoral politics we have now, we need to establish, if we want to continue this, let's say hypothetically, we would have to completely overhaul these electoral politics. Why do we have terms? Term limits are exactly the way to squash what y'all are talking about. If you don't like somebody, vote them out, but you got to wait 4 years. And we'll make it hard as hell to do an impeachment, right? So why don't we get rid of terms and put in place immediate recall? As soon as we stop liking somebody, we can immediately vote them out, right?
Let me ask you a question.
Something, right? Why don't we put in place electoral politics over voting? And this is a larger point, right, that I'm trying to make is we can have what I'm talking about is having a new electoral system, an actual democracy. And in order to have that new electoral actual democracy, we need to have electoral politics not just be in politics separate from the economy. We need to have electoral politics at Amazon. We need to have electoral politics at Audible. We need to have electoral politics at the Audible in the Ironbound. We need to have electoral politics at the Prudential that's in downtown Newark, right?
Let me ask you a question.
All that needs to be things that people who are working in those places on a day-to-day basis and affected by the decisions that they make on a day-to-day basis, they should be involved in the decisions that are made at those places. The 90% tax rate, all of history is a history of class struggle, right? We're not taught it. We're not taught that the Civil War was the largest slave rebellion in American history. We're not taught that, but that's what it was. It wasn't Lincoln freeing the slaves. It was the slaves freeing themselves. The reason we had a 90% tax rate is what we were talking about before, because people fought for it. The reason we don't have a 90% tax rate now is because people stopped fighting. Yes, inequality continues to grow and become worse and worse, but you can't say that individuals weren't rich. Rockefeller, Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, those were all people that existed before, and that's why people fought and made those changes, had the 90% tax rate. The Gilded Age was a thing. That was 1890s up to the 1900s. That's what led to eventually the Great Depression, which was what led to the 90% tax rate. So we can't just start history off at that point and act like it was the same all the way before it.
No.
It's a constant back and forth between the struggle of the working class and the struggles of the capitalist class to continue to subjugate us. But as long as we keep playing their game, as long as we keep playing their electoral politics and not creating our own electoral politics, we'll continue to allow them to have the power to take back the things we fought for.
Can I say something? So you have a level of passion, knowledge, engagement that, unfortunately, the average person your age or my age just doesn't have, right? When we say, electoral politics needs to function in the private sector as well, I don't disagree with that. It's just that when I start something, no one's going to have the drive to push it through the goal line like I'm going to have it. I don't want to be necessarily voted out of something I create or started or funded, or just because people just decide, well, you don't need to be there anymore. Now, that does exist when you have a board of directors. You can be voted out by the board of directors. You can be voted out. But it takes a level of knowledge, engagement, the inspiration that it takes for you to do your daily every single day and to be on the pulse of what needs to happen. And it takes that, or it's just chaos at the end of the day. It becomes, you just keep replacing figureheads, but the actual objective of why the thing was created is never met because we're just replacing people left and right. That said, even if we were to change the political dynamic that we have now, and I agree with you, it needs to be changed, it would only happen through electoral politics. Unless it's a dictatorship and you're just going to do what I say do because that's what it is, which is not what you're saying, I don't think. But you have to engage some type of democratic execution of what you're looking at, which again is government. It still reverts back to the government, a system that's set up that you use to execute a plan or replace people or put people in place that are going to work on behalf of the people. It still kind of goes back to, well, how do we get these people in power? Well, we have to vote them in. Now, how do you get the masses of people, or just more people, inspired and engaged like you are with the knowledge that you have to make sure we're putting the right people in place and not just reinventing the same old wheel?
It's not the people. At the end of the day, it's not the people. And that's what I was trying to say before. LBJ didn't pass the civil rights because he had a good heart. It's because people fought. And that's what I'm saying is it's a false dichotomy to think it's either democracy, it's either the government or dictatorship, right? And that the government is democratic. We have to get that out of our minds. It's not a democracy. And everything we have and that we have has been fought for through the true democratic means, through the true politics of grassroots mass organizing, through people being out in the streets and making the decisions and forcing those decisions because they realize that the electoral politics is not for them. We got the EPA after the first Earth Day. We got civil rights.
You say the people decide. How do they decide though? Like what's the system in place?
Just a brief. Hold on 1 second. Just a brief. Anyone the person who's in the background as LRM, can you just and your name, just write out your whole name so that we know who you are. All right. Can you continue?
No, Bradley was saying.
Bradley.
Oh, I think you were talking last.
How is the will of the people actualized is what I'm asking. How's
the will of the people actualized? That's what I'm saying before. There's a poem called People Are Practical. Nobody wants to be the first blade of grass. Nobody wants to be the first blade of grass to stand up just to be cut down. But if people start to see other people standing up, they will stand up as well. And that's the thing. Grassroots organizing and organizing on a collective basis taps into something else. It's not just starting your passion project that's individual and just about you. It's people seeing something that's collective as both collective and personal. That's what gets people motivated. That's what gets people moving. That's what gets people with drive. When we see so many mass movements, so many mass mobilizations, and they've been co-opted. The narrative has been co-opted to make us look at just MLK, to make us look at just Malcolm X, as if they were the movements. Those were people in mass seeing that struggle as their own, not just the passion project of another.
Right.
All right. So, well, this has been a great conversation. We're gonna continue the conversation. Bradley, we're gonna have you back hopefully often, right?
Yeah.
Because we're trying to get people, we're trying to get more of our co-producers into the show. You're an activist, you organize. Getting you with Zaid and other people, I think only good things can come from it, right? Because these conversations, I think, are important. We are getting ready to have our final guest of the evening on. So Bradley, we will see you. I will talk to you after the show, and you will definitely be back on more often. So
I love your spirit, brother. Keep doing
thank
what you're
you.
doing, man. Keep
Absolutely.
doing what you're doing. I love it.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you.
All right,
Yes,
you're very welcome. The first time you're meeting Hakeem Green?
No, I was on the show earlier when he was kind of.
Oh yeah, we did.
I
Okay.
popped in. I popped in late, and I was impressed then. I'm more impressed now, and I'm just. It's good.
Yeah.
It's
cool.
Hit me up sometime. Hit me up.
Sure.
Get
Will.
my contact information from
I will.
Austin.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you so
24
much.
hours apiece. We'll see you there, right?
24 hours apiece.
Yeah,
you got to send me the information.
Okay.
All right.
We'll
Send it
So
over.
thanks a lot. All right. Take care.
All right.
All right. So we are going to have the final guest that we're having on, LaMonica McIver, who is the Newark City Council president, and she is also running for elected office. She's running for the Congress today. So and she's also a frequent guest on our show.
LaMonica.
So thank you I know all of the candidates who are on today, they're working out in the field, people calling us from the cars, all the other stuff. So thank you. I know today is critical. I know that these are important days. Thank you for taking the time to come for the interview. And thank you for being here. Very much appreciated. And welcome back to All Politics Are Local.
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. Hey, Hakeem, what's up?
What's up?
It's a pleasure for me to be on. I'm sorry, I'm running a couple of minutes behind. It's like this last weekend before the election, early voting started today. Polls closed at 8:00, and so we're just hustling and bustling all the time. And honestly, Jonathan and Ed knows this very well. I hate taking this call sometimes when I'm on the show from the car, because I love to be like in front of my computer, sitting down, relaxed, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to get on. So thank you guys so much for looking at me in the car and trying to get some good lighting so you could be able to at least see me a little bit. But thank you guys.
No, thank you. And we're just going to jump right into it. You're running for Congress. What is there about your biography that people should know that would want them to have you as the representative?
So I think one thing about me that I love to talk about, it's actually one of the inspirational parts of me and my life, is that I've been involved in politics since the age of 10. I started working on a campaign. I had an amazing teacher who was running for council at the time of 5th grade when he was teaching us English and language arts. And he said, hey, I'm running for office. And many of us in the neighborhood, we still had neighborhood schools back then. We were like, what's that? Like, what's that about? Tell us more about it. And that year we got a #1 hands-on lesson about community, elections, civics, democracy, and we got hands-on, experience. He took us to the campaign headquarters, where I stayed and worked on that particular campaign for 17 years. The teacher lost for that long, and then finally, in year 17 and a half, he won a ward council seat. And it was at that purpose of my time at age 10 that I fell in love with serving my community, serving, through all of the lost elections, we stayed in the community. We had clothing drives, we had food drives, we did voter registration. We talked to our community about the importance of getting out to vote and what we needed to do in the elections and not waiting to election time. And so that's really where I got the love of politics and my purpose to really serve And I always say, like, politics kind of helped save me, because at that time I was like, my nickname back then in the 5th grade was Savage, because I used to be acting out in school all the time. And, I would get suspended so much. My mom would tell me, I'm not even going to take you back because you're going to get suspended again. And it doesn't make any sense. But, through that of getting involved in something positive and really having, a teacher and others that were involved in the campaign too, show you, what community look like, that really helped me fall in love with the work that I do, now 20 plus years, later. So
Wow.
I think.
So you have been working on the campaign since you've been working with Ras Baraka on campaigns since you were 10.
See, Jonathan, I didn't even dropped the name. See how you
Yeah.
knew that?
I mean, we have to say it. We have to say it. It's not as, I'm assuming it's not a secret. I'm assuming it's not a secret.
No, it's not a secret.
Okay. Oh, so that is 27 years of working on various campaigns, doing community work. You said that not only were you working on campaigns, you were doing drives, et cetera. Can you tell us more about that?
So yeah, we knew, like, after the first campaign, it was more than just running for office, right? And I try to explain this to a lot of people who tell me they want to run for office and they want to get involved. And, even some of the candidates that are running now, it's like, how do you really engage yourself before public office, right? People think they can only serve and really be in their purpose in elected seat. Well, I served for 20 plus years, not an elected seat. I mean, I worked behind the scenes. I did clothing drives. I did food drives. I did voter registration. I ran a youth team that was engaged in civics. I started my own nonprofit. I opened up a Women and Girls Center of Hope community center. And all of this is elected seat, and I try to explain you have to get involved. And I think that was the best thing for me. Like, I know some people go straight to an elected office, before doing any grassroots serving. But for me, that's kind of what helped mold me, into, the position of being an elected, official, with all of the work that I had before, and this was many young people I grew up with in my community. We worked, on all of these vast of community events, including elections. And it really, I felt good about it because I was able to, I thought I was like grown at the time. When a little girl, when you're like working and then you're telling grown people like, go out to vote, get registered to vote. It was always intriguing for me, but at the same time, it was purposeful work, and I knew that at 10.
So you also became an elected official, became a councilwoman. What is there that you've done as councilwoman that has helped you or prepare you for Congress?
So I always tell folks, especially now in these last 7.5 weeks, about the city of Newark, which many people want to continue to point that out. And they, continue wanting to put me in the box and say, oh, she's just from Newark. She only let in Newark. I mean, all types of things that I've continued to hear. And to be honest with you, it's exactly what has prepared me for this run and prepared me for this seat. One, we have to be very progressive in our city. We focus on a lot of progressive policies, a lot of progressive legislation and initiatives, because we have to deliver for our people the best way that we can. And sometimes that comes in a progressive tone, and progressive matter. And some of those things that we've been doing progressively have been around affordable housing, which I've been on this show to talk about multiple times. Rather, it's our, revising and creating our inclusionary zoning ordinance, making them stronger to be able to, advocate for more affordable housing for our residents. Rather, it's our land bank, the only land bank in New Jersey where we're able to give homes away to residents for $1, help, rehab them, and allow them to use their Section 8 voucher for mortgage. Rather, it's, attracting small Black and minority developers to be able to build affordable housing. Rather, it's, offering rent, assistance. Rather, it's creating an office of legal and tenant, services for residents that are impacted by, illegal evictions, or need, support legally, around housing. Those are a lot of things that we've been doing on an affordable tip, for our, housing, and how we develop that. And many of that has been advocating with our state and federal agencies to be able to get assistance and get money. Right now, we offer first-time home buyers here in the city $20,000 down payment. We offer $40,000 grant assistance programs for those who need to do exterior work on their houses, throughout the city, or if you're buying a new house that requires exterior, assistance, we offer the $40,000 grant. So we've been doing a lot of work around our affordable housing for homeowners and renters, here in the city. Definitely on the progressive tip. Definitely my work around, Office of Violence Prevention, our public safety, the way that we've been able to reimagine public safety here in the city, that has taken the administration, our executive leader, and the council to be collaboratively working together to reimagine how we govern our city. We now have the Office of Violence and Prevention. We now have a bunch of social organizations that are involved with helping us decrease, crime in our city. And while it's not perfect, I want to put that out there, because people get upset. When you talk about when you talk about the progress, people make it seem like, oh, you're bragging, you're trying to say it's perfect. I just want to make a disclaimer: we are not perfect, but we are at 60-year decrease, in crime here in the city, and that's something to talk about. I think one murder or one crime is, more than too much, and I think to those families, you're not trying to, water it down, but I think at the end of the day, we have made some progress with our rates that have dropped over time, and also people, know
And when
that,
you're
and they.
talking, and I was going to say, when you're talking about the Office of Violence Prevention, you're talking about a program that started in Newark and other local places around the country. Now there is a state Office of Violence Prevention and even a federal Office of Violence Prevention, modeled off of the work that was done in Newark, among other places, right? Like, so you're talking
Exactly.
about something that is a local model of excellence that gets adopted by the state and has been adopted by the federal government, right? So those
Exactly.
are the things that probably should also, be brought out, as in, yes, there are still murders, but these are programs that Newark is known for more than any place.
Exactly. And Jonathan, you stole my thunder a little bit. Yeah, I was going to get to that, about how we have laid the, foundation for some other offices to be created on different levels of government, but also even other states and cities have visited us to, find out how we did it, how we're doing it, what's working, what needs, changes, and we're appreciative of that, and we understand that. So, definitely the work around that. And then lastly, I will lead with our infrastructure, leadership that we've shown here in the city. I think you cannot talk about Newark in this day and time and not talk about our progress with changing over 18,000 lead service lines within, 2.5 years, or less than 2.5 years. Here in the city. While now it's popular to talk about infrastructure, right? And bills and money coming through. We did it, without that, and now we trying to figure out how we get a refund. But at the same time, we've done it with no cost to residents, bonding, doing it with amazing leadership, in our city. And lots of, states and cities are talking about that right now. That's a large conversation, even within the Congressional District 10, to multiple municipalities that I've been in who have infrastructure problems, and they are not able to fix them on their own. And the federal government, needs to, chip in and help out, these municipalities with assistance with that. So, those are, some top things that, we've been doing. And lastly, we've been spending a lot of time talking about democracy. Many candidates on the trail talking about, we need to protect our democracy. We need to, expand. We need to do this. And I have done that. And, Jonathan was a big part of that advocacy as well, with many other organizations that helped out when this city changed the voting age for school board elections here in Newark to 16 and 17. And while we couldn't kick off in 2024, we're really looking forward to kicking off in 2025 and rolling that out to be able to expand democracy. And those are the types of progressive policies that we need nationwide to really protect democracy, but of course, expand it as well.
This is similar to the questions that I asked, but it's very more specific to domestic policy. Um, what type of domestic legislation would you pursue for District 10 when you're looking at things that are going on? And in that, if you want to talk about like anything along the lines of reparations or or like federal bills that deal with police violence and police brutality?
So I think there's a lot of work to pursue, right? I think definitely the conversation around reparations, we need to get to a point where we're just stopping talking about it and doing something. I talked a lot about this at the debate. Like, there's been different conversations on the state level and the federal level around reparations, but we need to get together and finally push the needle on, putting a real concrete plan into reparations and developing, some real, framework of what that looks like. And I know lots of people are working on it, and there's a lot of conversation, with the CBC and others who are working on it. But I think, it's time to really, do something. I think, we have to continue and definitely with my passion about working in OVP and, Office of Violence Prevention and everything that we've done here in the city, especially through the, George Floyd era and everything that we've dealt with. I think that we still have to have crucial conversation about, police brutality, here in this nation, and how do we, push forward to change that. And I think Office of Violence Prevention, once again, not to toot our own horn, is a great framework and development for, many states and cities across the nation to adopt and take a look at. And that's something that, we should be trying to roll out, at a national level.
And I know we're running out of time, but I do want to.
I'm sorry. I can't not end without saying this, because I'll have to see Baba out on the street, and I don't want to do that. But we can't not talk about the CRB as well. Some work that we're working on, extremely important here in the state. And we're still fighting for our CRB board here, in Newark, and working towards that. So definitely another national platform we need to be putting together.
And CRB, a civilian complaint review board, where there is civilian oversight of the police.
Yep.
Okay, so the one of the things that I want to actually also get into, I know we're running out of time, but foreign policy. There are things that are going on in Ukraine, Israel. There are American troops that are on the African continent. There's issues in Haiti. What is your vision of American foreign policy? What are some of the things that we should fund? What are some of the things that we should question whether or not we fund?
So I think, we need to have some equity in how we help all countries, in foreign affairs. I think, sometimes it's a pick and choose situation. I was on a Caribbean radio station this weekend, with the Caribbean, culture folks talking about like some of the recent weather situations that happened there and how they need assistance. And thus far, and I just think there's no equity around how we're supporting all of the countries. Rather you see things that are happening in the Congo, rather you see things that are happening with folks who are protesting in Kenya right now. There's just so much, chaos happening, around the world, where I feel like it's a pick and choose for us nationally of what we want to engage in. And I think that the number one thing we need to do is be equitable in the assistance that we provide, and be able to support everyone. We have to be in a safe space and have leaders that are going to call out what's wrong, and what's right is right, and be able to support, the different countries who are in need. And I just think right now I don't see that happening to be able to support everyone who needs help.
Okay. And finally, there are two questions that we end with. What are who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? And also, how should people vote? Like, what's the line? What's the different lines in the different counties?
So this week, when I come on the show, I always say I don't have a favorite. It's usually the genre changes for me week by week. And I've said this multiple times, but this week it's definitely Jay-Z for me. I've been digging into the crates, as, Hakeem would appreciate this. I've been digging into the crates, of Jay-Z this week. But next week it may be Kendrick Lamar, and the week after that it may be Drake. But this week is Jay-Z for sure. And
Excuse me, all wrong answers.
I know what you want to hear.
All wrong answers.
You
Hakeem
want
was
to hear
like,
me?
wait.
Hakeem would rather me say Rakim or somebody. I know how he
No,
does.
No, I think he wants you to say
Hakeem with Hakeem Green. What are you talking about? Hakeem Green. None of them jokers have made
That is
Rakim and
right.
KRS, but none of them other jokers got work for me.
Next weekend, maybe Hakeem for sure.
Okay.
So definitely those. But for those, I just want to remind folks that early voting has kicked off today, and we're going to be doing early voting tomorrow, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can get out tomorrow. There are early voting polling sites in each county. And definitely I encourage residents to take advantage of voting on Saturday, tomorrow. If you can't make it on Saturday, guess what? You got another shot at it on Sunday when polls are open from 10 a.m. To 6 p.m. Definitely get out there to vote. And if Sunday doesn't fit your schedule, well, your final day is Tuesday. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you can find me, LaMonica McIver, on the ballot in Essex for 5A. And in Union in Hudson County, you can find me on the ballot as 1A. Really looking forward to, the closeout of this for our first hump through this, special election process. And I really encourage folks to not be discouraged. Don't go running away from elections. We need you to run to the polls and exercise your right and, engage in your civic duty to vote. I know folks are very removed, and this week has made it even more rough for us in the politics sector, but we must run to the polls. We should not skip. We should not walk, but we should run there to be able to, cast our vote for this very important position, which is a Congress seat, at the federal level. And there's no time for tryouts. We just need to go prepared and ready to work and cast your vote on someone who has delivered results, who has experience, who is qualified, and who's passionate about this work. So thank you guys for having me. I appreciate you as always. And y'all remember to get to the polls too.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. All right. So thank you so much for coming out again and being on the show, and good luck.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
All right. You too.
Peace.
All right. So, Rhino,
Good.
sorry for the delay. We were trying to have as many candidates on as possible. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get all of the candidates on, but we definitely are good to have. We're definitely glad that we have the candidates that we have, because civic discourse is important, voting is important, and we definitely want to make sure that people get their voices heard. So, Rhino, what's up? What's going on?
Yeah. So, real quick, yeah, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I do want to say, release alert. Common and Pete Rock, they finally released the album. It's out right now. You can go check it out. It's called Auditorium Volume 1, the Auditorium Volume 1. Definitely go check it out. I haven't heard it yet. I'm getting it tonight, so I'm definitely going to hear it tonight. What I have heard, I heard it, matter of fact, just before I got on the show, was LL's new single, Passion.
Crazy.
It's almost as it hits me almost the way The Force did when he dropped The Force. You know what I'm saying? Like like LL's really getting into his bag, man. So it's good to see that. So definitely go check that out. Passion by LL. It's just him. But that joint.
Did you hear the LL Fat Joe Rick Ross joint?
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Saturday night special.
Saturday special. Woo! I'm like, man, LL and Q-Tip, man, they in the bag, boy.
Yeah, man.
I'm loving it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that album. Waiting for that one to drop. And Rakim's as well.
Oh, yeah.
Rakim did all the production pretty much.
Yeah.
And the scratches and cuts. So that's something I'm looking out for too.
Oh, yeah.
But that's it as far as news. Tomorrow is MF Doom's born day. Rest in peace, MF Doom, Zev Love X. Me and these brothers here, Operation Good Vibes OGV, we're doing a tribute to him tomorrow, starting at 12 noon on Twitch. So if you go to, it's going to be it's called the Operation Doomsday Raid Train. So what you do, you go to twitch.tv. My man Train is starting it off. DJ R Train, that's Trane. DJ R Train 7. So it's twitch.tv/DJ R Train 7. He sets it off at noon. Then after him is my man Max Jerome and Jay. He's coming on. Then my man D Rich jumps on, and then I'm jumping on at 3 p.m. So, and it's going to be all Doom music. We're getting down. So if you're a fan or a supporter of Doom, or if you're just interested in what Doom is about and what he sound like and his work, we're going to get into some Doom tomorrow on his born day. His born day is tomorrow, 13th. So that's what we're doing tomorrow. That's it, man.
All right.
Can I make some quick announcements?
Oh, absolutely.
So I officially dropped the Madism brand of cannabis.
Yeah,
out in Detroit, Michigan. Big shout out to L Train, and we're doing big things. And we did an event this past Wednesday out in Detroit, Michigan, on 8 Mile at the Clinic Cannabis Company. We got it rolling. I got a 3-pack, 3 different flavors. I got Bruce Banner crossed with peaches and cream, sour diesel crossed with skunk, baked blueberry, and then what I'm doing is a little something different. Is with each package, you get 3 free downloads. What is Madism featuring KRS-One General Steel, produced by Breakbeat Lou. Smoke Madism featuring Do It All Kelly, Tretch from Naughty by Nature, and Keith Murray, produced by Domingo. And Poppy's Place featuring Thurston Howell III, produced by Will Tell. And all we do is spark Madism for real. We're going to lock down the Michigan market heavy. We're going to be out in Jersey pretty soon. New York, California, Colorado, Washington, D.C., Washington State, everywhere cannabis is legal, Madism will be on the shelf. All we do is spark Madism. And 24 hours apiece, August 23rd and 24th, going down on Central Avenue between Market and 10th. August 23rd and 24th, all female lineup. It's going to be phenomenal. I can announce the lineup. We got Roxanne Shante, Lady Luck, Rod Digger, of course. We got Sunshine Anderson. We got Moni Love, Yo-Yo, and Lady of Rage.
Oh!
We got a diva for the house segment from 12 to 4. A diva's coming out. And for Saturday, we got Asian Doll, Juicy 2 Times, Lola Brooks, The Baddies, Biggie and Taseki, Lady London, and Honey Baby. That's on Saturday. So it's going to be kind of off the chain. August 23rd, 24th, 24 hours apiece. Of course, brought to you by the great city of Newark, Mayor Roz Baraka, Office of Violence Prevention Trauma Recovery, Brick City Peace Collective, New Direction, One Hood. It's going to be right and exact. Big shout out to the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition for giving me the inspiration. Giving us the inspiration, shall I say.
All right. Well, thank you. And that's that should be good. That should be really good. So the where to find the council president on the ballot, that was she already said that, and it depends on what county you're in. So they're in different places on different because Hudson County has its own ballot, Essex has its ballot, and the other county that it's in has their own ballot, and so those different positions on the ballot, I believe, was sent to her by her in her during her interview, but I don't have that information on me because it's different counties as well. So, thank all the guests for coming out tonight. Very much appreciate everybody who got on. Very much appreciate all the guests that got on, and everyone who came out, and people who contacted us to get on the show for it. A real shout out to the different candidates, because a lot of the candidates actually contacted us to get on the show, and we definitely appreciate that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get everyone on the show because I know that there's some candidates that didn't get on the show, and my bad for that. But we want to make sure that we got as many as possible, and real big push for the people who contacted us, because everyone who contacted us, we were able to get on the show. So my apology for not getting anyone on, getting all the candidates on the show. but we're glad that we got as many as we could for this week. So thank you. Until next week. Good night. Thanks, Bradley, also for coming out and coming on the show. We appreciated that conversation as well. Appreciate you, Hakeem. Appreciate you also, DJ Ryan.
Yes, sir.
And until next week.
Peace.
Peace.